of King with Peter first, then Robert, and then Jamie, just to give advance warning to them. So, Gozen, could we just begin by just asking you to just tell us in your own words briefly what happened?
Okay. Um, can I just briefly address what you shared? I'm happy with the recording to happen. I don't think I'll share anything that I didn't share in tribunal, which is all public information anyway. So we can assess what happens after, and I can kind of let you know that I'm still okay, if that's all right.
Yes, absolutely.
So what happened? I was headhunted for a role at St Anne's Catholic School. I was working for the London Borough of Enfield. And St Anne's was one of the schools I was working with. So they got to see me over a couple of 2 years. I was doing girl groups, I was doing one-to-one mentoring with their particularly difficult students. I was part of the behaviour outreach, secondary school behaviour outreach team for Enfield Borough. And they really liked the work I did. And 2 years into that role, I was kind of like praying and saying, like, God, like, I kind of want more of a challenge. Like, this is quite easy in the sense of the students already responding to me. If it be your will, may I have more responsibility within this? And then I started kind of talking to the staff at the school and all the schools I went to. I went to 8 different schools in the nine over the year. Yeah. So as I was doing that, one of the SLT members, the senior leader team, was like, "We need help. Well, like we really need help at our school. I'm going to put a word into the head teacher." So then I then spoke with the head teacher, who was Mrs. Loveland, and she's like, "Yes, your work you're doing at the school is fantastic. We need you." And I remember in those initial conversations, she's like, I don't know what your role looks like, but we need you. And we really want you to come here because we know, we've seen your results, we've seen your receipts. And in those conversations, it became apparent I could only do 4 days a week, not 5 days. And I genuinely thought she was going to be like, sorry, can't have you if you're only doing 4 days a week as a head of year role position. But to my surprise, she said yes. We'll get you another team member whom you can manage and manage the workload throughout the week. And I was like, great. And she was like, how much are we paying you? And I'm like, can I get back to you? Like, I just felt like it was open door after open door, and they really wanted me there. She explicitly said it in an email. She said, the girls need you, the school needs you, I need you. I know she was quite pressurized for staff members at the time too, so she needed someone that she could rely on at the time. So I started at the school and it was fantastic because some of the students knew me already. So there wasn't this like hoo-ha, who is she? It was like, oh, I've seen her face around before. Oh yeah, she's so-and-so's mentor. And oh yeah, Missy, you so-and-so's mentor, those kind of discussions. But it was quite an easy transition. Um, I'm quite confident with working with young people. I had 180 girls in my year group and it was going smoothly. There were obviously challenges every single day. It wasn't an easy role. Being a pastoral manager for 180 girls who are highly emotional, 14 to 15-year-olds. There was a box of tissues, not just for them, but for me too, to go for our day to day. But it was wonderful. I loved it. I knew it was an assignment from God for me. Like this wasn't a job, it was an assignment. And I knew that it would be a few years that I would be there as opposed to months, or I didn't see myself being there for 10 years, let's say. It was always like a probably like 2 to 5 years role in my mind. So as I was doing it, it was great. There was one query my line manager brought up with me, and he said, "Oh, it's come to our attention you share scripture with students." To which I replied, "Oh, please let me know what student it is." And he was like, "Oh, we can't give this information." And and he said, "Oh, is that something you would do?" And I said, "Absolutely. I'm a pastoral lead. It's a Catholic school. There are scriptures plastered on the walls around, and as we give assemblies, which was one of my responsibilities too, we would share scriptures, we would share parables." we would share the word of God. So I said, absolutely, it was something I would do to encourage the students. And it would always be to counsel, encourage, to comfort. Um, that was the only kind of concern about my faith. Another one was the first assembly I did because they didn't give us full training. I just completely forgot to say the prayer, the school prayer with the girls. And the deputy head was like, oh, just one fantastic assembly, one correction. You've got to say the school prayer with the girls. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, that will never happen again. And it didn't over the 6 months that I was there. So 5 months into my role, I got called to the deputy head or the assistant head, Jo Sanders, and she was quite a. The girls were quite intimidated by her because she was quite stern in her appearance. Yet I really liked her. Both of our fathers were a shepherd, and I'm one of these people that I like finding connections in how to connect with people. So I really liked her, and I'll go to her often. So I didn't see it as an issue, me going to her office or her calling me to go speak to her. And I was like, okay, well, clearly there's something up that she needs my help or an inquiry or something, and I'm here to help. So I go to her office and she said, oh, this is going to be a difficult conversation. I'm like, okay, I'm okay with difficult conversations. And she said, oh, it's come to our attention. Your social media has come to our attention. I'm like, okay, I'm not hiding anything. It's all public. It's been there. I started my social media accounts early 2010, like those years, but it kind of started kicking off around 2015. So nearly a decade before I started at school. So it's all public information. They could have done a Google search and seen it. And I'm like, okay, so what about my social media has come to your attention? And they said, oh, it appears that there's a post there talking about women in a negative way. And I'm like, really? Because that's not what I'm about. I'm about women empowerment. I think women are incredible people and that God made us so perfectly. And I'm here to encourage and empower women. That's pretty much what I do. So I'm like, how so? And she said, oh, well, there's this woman with a headscarf on who um who has basically she says something along the lines of if my husband asked me to do the dishes, I'll do dishes. If he asked me to make his plate for dinner, I'll do it. Or, if he tells me not to go out in the evening, I won't go. But she caveats it with, but I know my husband loves me and I knew the man he was before I married him. And the question she posed at the end of the video was, what are you willing to do to be the wife of the husband you say you want? And my ministry page online is called Wife in the Waiting. It's about positioning and posturing yourself to be a wife, if that be your desire. I know it's not everyone's desire, especially not in today's culture. However, if that be your desire, like I thought it was a legitimate question. What are you willing to do to be the wife that you say you want to be? So she was like, yes, social media accounts need to be private. And I'm like, I've read all your policies. Like, I have a legal background. I got called to the bar and practiced in law for 10 years before this role. So I read the small print. And nothing within your policies has kind of stood out to me to say your public social media need to be private. So I said, please, can you show me that? And she's like, well, we don't have that right now. And I was like, Joe, what are you asking me to do? And she said, take the post down. And I thought, you know what? I don't particularly want this confrontation. I don't want this to be, a problem here. I agreed to take the post down. Not that I saw anything wrong in it, but just merely because they asked me to. I quote unquote submitted to them in their request. So the following week was half term, so we weren't around. And then the week after, Joe gives me a little nudge after the school assembly and says, did you take the post out? Like just like a quick little under her breath as the girls were leaving to go back to class. And I was like, yeah, taken care of. And and then she's like, great. She goes, because Emma's going to be looking at your social media this weekend. And I was like, okay, I still don't see anything wrong with what I do in terms of social media. Wife in the Waiting is about encouraging women, helping them heal, know their worth and value is in God, not a relationship status, not anything else that's happened to them and to walk in purpose. And that's what I was doing. I was walking in purpose. I was the embodiment of wife in the waiting, an example, a role model, let's say. Um, Not perfect in any way, but completely reliant on God. So, and then so the weekend happens. Emma looks at my social media profile, and I think on one of my accounts, I just completely forgot to take the post down, and it was an account that wasn't as popular, and I wasn't active on. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'll deal with that immediately. So I think it was the 27th. She calls me into our office for a meeting, and I thought, I didn't think anything of it. Like in my mind, I've done nothing wrong. There's been no concerns about anything with the students. Um, and what I'm doing online, in my view, supports the faith, the proclaimed faith of the school, at least, and is also my personal convictions and faith that I share publicly. So in that first conversation, it was very much like, oh, yes, we can't have this. This is an issue for us. We've had anonymous complaint, one from a student, one from a parent, and this is an issue. I don't know how to deal with it. She kind of posed the question on me. She goes, like, you need to do something. And I'm like, okay. Um, Obviously completely kind of like, what do I do? I don't know. I said, all right, how long do I have? Because she spoke about possibly taking my name off of it, putting an alias name in place. And I'm like, okay, well, I can consider that. You know, Lady Gozen's not quite my full name. I can take my full name off the page and, I can take the link off of Lady Gozen and Wife in the Waiting because now the issue wasn't just the post, it was the whole premise of Wife in the Waiting. And I'm like, what's the issue? And she said, well, it appears as though unless you're a wife, you're of no worth. To which I was like, I literally said to her, I was like, Emma, you know that I am not a wife yet. You know, it's a desire I hold. Yet you know I carry myself with worth and value. I said, you wouldn't have headhunted me otherwise. And she said, well, you're right. But it's as though it's like 18th century teaching on womanhood, and we're a 21st century establishment, and we can't have that. Um, I still don't get it. I'm literally kind of like asking her, like, what is it about wife in the waiting? What is it about what I'm doing that it doesn't line up? But I said, okay, how long do I have to correct or at least try to alleviate your concerns? And she said 24 hours. Like, okay, like I believe in God. I'm gonna go home and pray and see what I can do. So the following day, um, around lunchtime, it was my birthday the following day.
Mm.
And around lunchtime, I email her saying, hi Emma, thank you for our conversation. I've got a copy of the email. I can send that through if you like. And it says, further to our conversation yesterday, I I'm able to make these changes. And Emma likes things in bullet points, so I made sure it was in bullet points. So, very quick, easy to read. So I was like, the first change I'm going to do is disconnect Lady Gozen to Wife in the Waiting. So people can't automatically connect the two. I said, the second change I'm going to make is every post that has my name Gozen on in Wife in the Waiting, seen as that's your concern, I'm going to remove the post or redo the post without my name on it. And I said the third thing was um, I'm going to remove my name, Gozen Soydag, from all of the posts in Wife in the Waiting. I believe those were the three changes, but I could absolutely send that email to you. And then she said, thank you for she replied back saying, thank you for your email. Come and see me at 4 o'clock today. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, in my mind, I've done everything I've been asked to do. So I went to go see her and we had a conversation. She's like, I really don't want to do this, but I have no other choice. She turned around and said something along the lines of, you're global. This is a big issue for us. Um, in my mind, I was thinking global. I was like, what a compliment. Like, I didn't think I had that many, like 30,000, like, isn't huge in the social media world. And I'm like, thank you, kind of thing. Um, but she's like, this is a big issue. She says, we're no longer going to need your services. And I was really taken back to the extent that I actually shed some tears and she offered me tissue. Um,
Mm.
and I'm like, really taken back. And I said, is it that you, she said, we can't have this. And I said, is it that you can't or you won't? Like, and she said, I can't. And I was like, why? She goes, because I've already decided. And she's like, we no longer need your services. Um, the HR manager is going to escort you to your office, which was literally a couple of yards away from her. It was very close. And we're going to take your laptop away from you, obviously, like immediately. Um, and yeah, that's we no longer need your services. Like, thank you. To which I responded, I was like, well, thank you for the opportunity. And I walked out of her office. Like, I genuinely am so grateful for the time I've had with those students. I've loved every minute of it. And it was a dream job because I was getting to be the impact. And in that short space of time, even the senior leaders that were head of behavior, he would always come up to me and be like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Your year group was the worst when you started, and now they have the least amount of behavior points now." He goes, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "A lot of prayer, a lot of prayer." So praying, but also in the assemblies, I would teach them about knowing their worth and value. I would share my own personal stories about being bullied at school and how I use that to craft my skills and talents to then be before them today. I would show them pictures of what I used to look like as a child at school, and they're like, "Miss, you've glowed up a lot." But like, I would connect with the students. I would counsel them, being a counselor too. I actually had clients that I was counseling at the school. It was part of my placement for my therapy course. And when I ended, one of my biggest concerns was that therapeutic relationship I had with those counseling students from the years above me, because I couldn't counsel for placement my year group, even though they'll come in and would have like little sessions to help them. That was a huge concern for me because that therapeutic relationship is quite sacred and quite just it's
Mm.
very different. And I wanted to be able to let them know that I wasn't abandoning them because they were having issues of abandonment and whatnot, but they didn't seem so concerned. I did write some notes up to each one to say how much I enjoyed the time with them and how proud I am of them for the changes they've made. Quite generic, but specific enough for them to know that it was a heartfelt message for them specifically. I doubt that those messages were even given to the students with what the conversations were about at tribunal. But yeah, that was pretty much it. I was devastated. I remember coming out, I just packed a couple of like Tesco bags, whatever I had, and just left. And I took my painting from the wall that I'd painted when I was at school that I used to have up so that they could see that I was once 15 too.
Mm.
And I did an assembly on it. And like I took my couple of little teddies I had in the room that I'd give the girls to help comfort them for those that just wanted to come and sit in my room and just hold a soft teddy. Um, yeah, I just left. And I remember phoning my father and being like, "Dad, you never guess what? They've just fired me." And there was tears streaming down my face as I was driving home. And he was like enraged. He was like, "How dare they?" Da, da, da. And I was like, "Dad, but something good has to come of this. But something good has to come of this. Like if God has hardened this head teacher's heart after softening it so much to basically, she did everything she could to have me in the school. Like she paid me double what any other person in that year group had, sorry, in that position had, all the other heads of years. They were called learning support coordinators. I was the only one called pastoral manager. Um, and it's a bit of an aside, but God had kind of told me before the year before that I was going to be a pastor, and I was like, "God, no, I don't want to be a pastor, God." But in the this aspect, I was a pastor. I was shepherding these 180 girls, so it wasn't to my surprise when she came up with the title pastoral manager. So I just knew I was meant to be there. And I'm saddened the fact that it was such a short time and the fact that didn't have a chance to say bye to any of the students. I was treated like I was a danger to be in that school with the students. Everything was taken away straight away. They're like, "Yep, don't come in tomorrow. We don't need your services." That was it.
Right. Thank you. It all sounds a bit hairy actually listening to that. Um, can I just ask a few questions just to get a clearer picture first off?
Sure.
Your day-to-day role in the school, you've mentioned that you took assemblies. Did you
Mhm.
actually take classes as well, or were you there simply as a, someone that the girls came to?
So I was a non-teaching head of year. I didn't teach classes. However, if a class didn't have a teacher, I would go sit in and kind of facilitate the room, have the cover work. Like I was a quote unquote cover supply teacher as and when needed too. But I
Right.
wasn't an active teacher, even though, yeah, I wasn't there to teach. I was a non-teaching head of year. So everything other than teaching. So dealing with parents' concerns, safeguarding issues. I was a safeguarding officer. Um, Obviously any behavior issues with the students, any concern they had. I had an open door policy. They could just come in. Any issues with learning, any student that needed extra support because they were ill or had learning difficulties, any send students, like all of these things were my responsibility at the school and also to support the other heads of years.
Okay. And the school obviously was familiar with your work before you were offered the position.
Mhm.
Would the girls too have been, I mean, you said several of them knew you. Would that have been through your social media presence or through actual involvement with them at a more personal level?
I had not spoken to anyone about social media, so it definitely wasn't that. They had, so I used to go to the upper school and the lower school to work with students. Every week I was uh, half a day at the upper school, half a day at the lower school for
This was
two.
before you took on the role.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I had close relationships with the other heads of years, so they were very familiar with me. I had close relationships with the behavior team. I would often sit on behavior panels with students that were near exclusion and having warnings and stuff because they were the ones I was mentoring. So I had contact with quite a few members of staff. Um, Most of them knew my face, had spoken to me at some point, as well as the students that I'd worked with. I'd worked with at least, say, 30 students, but they would also see me sometimes just around the school and be like, "Oh, hi, miss," like, hi, that kind of thing. So I wasn't an unknown face. At least one person in the classroom would have known who I was, and they would have obviously told the other girls. They were like, yeah, that's my mentor.
Yeah, okay. When you were approached to take on the role at the school, did you have to submit a CV at all?
Um, Just before I answer that, I'd also gone to the end of year trip to Thorpe Park with the whole year group because by this point they'd known that I was going to come and work with them. So Emma Loveland was like, if you're available, please come to Thorpe Park. So every girl in the year group would have seen my face on that coach in
Okay, yeah.
so I was definitely involved and integrated in. In terms of CV, I gave my CV after the email negotiations of actually getting the role. They were like, "Oh, can you send HR your CV?" So it was a, "We want you. We've agreed the terms. Oh, please send your CV in." So yeah, I sent it.
And did you mention in that CV your social media activities at all?
I put that I was an online mentor coach. So I did, and I do that. I've had mentoring programs online with Wife in the Waiting Academy. I was just seeing if I've got it here. It was on there that I was an online mentor coach. So
Okay, but that could be open to
they-
interpretation, couldn't it? So,
right?
yeah, no,
Yeah,
no,
it could have
that's okay.
been.
Are you uh, Christian, obviously?
Mhm.
Would you see yourself as Catholic or Protestant, or how would you define yourself in churchmanship terms?
Bible believing believer. Um, I I have a personal relationship with Jesus. I don't describe myself under any specific denomination. Um, I have I'm quite evangelical in nature, as in I talk
Mhm.
about Jesus. That's the evangelical kind of side. But other than that, I have a personal relationship with Jesus. Christianity is my life strategy, it's my moral compass. I read the Bible and I believe the word of God.
Okay, that sounds encouraging. Um, well, I mean, one of the grounds for your the tribunal was religious discrimination, though, and it occurs to me that it's a Catholic school that you're working in,
Mhm.
and it sounds like a very active Catholic school. And is it really religious discrimination, their stance that they took towards you when they discovered the social media posts, or is it doctrinal difference?
That's a very interesting point because on the face of it, it's very Catholic. Yet, um, other than having mass every term, a statue of Mary at the front, St. Anne's prayer on the wall, and scriptures on the wall, I was questioned for talking to students about scripture or just referring to
Mm.
scripture. So, on the face of it, sure, Catholic school, but in principle, um, it's a huge question mark. In terms of doctrinal differences, that's a very interesting one too, because during the tribunal, we had a joint expert report. I forgot his name. Did I send that through? I'm not sure if I did. I may not have.
I've seen that. If you could send it
No,
to us, though, that
we
would be.
we didn't get that, Gozen, but yeah, do feel free to send it
Mhm.
after this.
Um, I do want to share something about it before I send it. Uh, I may not send it. But the expert report clarified that they were not disputing my religious beliefs um, because his conclusion was that my beliefs, and we put them in six different points in terms of wives submitting to their husbands, husbands loving their wives, believing in the purity before, like in terms of like no sex before marriage. And we kind of listed six there. Um, the theologian report said that not only was I part of the complementarian Christian view in terms of like the hierarchy within the family, but I was also very much in line with canon law, which is what Catholicism obviously is structured on. So, in fact, I quote unquote could be said to be more Catholic than they are because I actually believed in what they say their doctrine is. And this is what the theologians shared in the report.
Hmm. If I mean, the school said to you that your views were in conflict with their ethos.
Mhm.
Um, if that's so, do you think that did have grounds for not wanting to employ you? I'm just thinking that if you were in the position of the head teacher, and one of the staff was teaching, same-sex marriage was fine,
Mhm.
and they were very committed Christians.
Mhm.
How would you react to that? Because would you be happy and say, yes, that's fine, go ahead with that? Or would you say, well, no, we can't have you giving that sort of teaching in school?
Well, it's my understanding that unless you're of the Catholic faith, you can't be a head teacher at a Catholic school. Um, Part of that is to uphold the faith. I understand that they have views on inclusivity and, freedom of expression at the school. However, like personally, from my position, that wasn't my business. I was just responsible for me. I can't say what I would do as a head teacher. Um, I would hope that a head teacher would try to alleviate confusion because we know God is not the author of confusion. Um, However, I've learned like that's between her and God and her role. It's not for me to
Mhm.
say. Um, I personally would, I guess, so my emphasis is to be curious. I'm like, okay. like my therapeutic hat comes on and I just get curious about how have you come to that conclusion? I learned that my line manager was an atheist and he was part of the senior leadership team and he was asking me about, mentioning scripture to students. And I'm like, I'm curious as to why he's an atheist. I think he has a story. And as I kind of like asked a few questions, it turned out that he was from a Christian home and clearly got upset with God and chose to become an atheist because I'm of the firm belief that if you're an atheist, like you have a stand against God in terms of like, nope, there's no God. Whereas agnostics kind of at least acknowledge God and whatever else. So I'm more curious to hear people's stories and to get to know them
Okay.
rather than have any judgment on what they're sharing.
Okay, no, that makes sense. As I said, I'm just wondering about whether this could technically be seen as religious discrimination or simply doctrinal differences. And I think there is a difference here. One other thing, just before I open it up to the others for their questions, this one of your grounds of complaint was that you were never given a written contract.
Mhm.
Um, Now, clearly you had, an agreement.
Mhm.
Very many contracts of employment will have a 6 month probationary period. Was it your understanding that that would be a part of the contract of employment between you and the school, or was it your understanding that there was no idea of a probationary period included?
So I was part of the school in terms of like I was a contractor, quote unquote, because they
Mhm.
paid me separately. They paid me to my business as opposed to as a pay PAYE employee. So on that, every month I wrote the contractual period, which was the whole year. So every month I would send them my invoice, which had contractual period the whole of year 10 until the next academic year. And I had a conversation with Emma at one point earlier in the year, or might have been the end of the first like December time, where she was like, oh, she goes, around Easter, let's talk about keeping you on for the next year. And she was talking to me about a student that was coming after Easter for that term to put some things in place. So there was nothing from any conversation that I was thinking this is only going to be half a year. It was always we're going to see the year out and have a conversation for next year.
Okay, and my understanding is from the documents that you gave us that you were actually the one who was putting back a bit at that point and saying, let's think about this more clearly.
In
What?
terms of the contract,
So you were clear that you wanted to stay at the school, but you weren't clear of the contractual terms. Is that what you mean?
no, so we hadn't had a conversation about continuing at the school. So before the actual employment, I remember we had the terms laid out. She had agreed to the amount and whatever else. And I said, can I take the weekend to pray on this? Like I just and so she knew that I was very much a person of faith and that I prayed at least. And I
Mm.
said, I need to hear what God has to say for me about this assignment because everything I do is an assignment from God. And I'm like, I need to see what God has to say. And she made a comment. She goes, well, I know what my God has to say, and he wants you at this school. And I said, well, I will let you know by Monday. So there was there was no doubt that she wanted me at the school, and we hadn't had a conversation beyond seeing this year out.
But you got back on the Monday saying, yes, that's fine.
Yes.
And then you didn't receive the written contract as you were expecting.
So there's an email exchange where I share um will we have a contract? It'd be great to have a contract. And then she's like, okay, well, you can send me one or I can get HR to do one, like write a contract after we had agreed to everything on that.
Mm.
And that just never happened. It is such a fast-paced role. I didn't stop and was like, oh yeah, what about the contract? And they hadn't
But
sent.
she invited you to send one if you liked, and you didn't do that.
She said, feel free to send one, or I can get HR too.
So you could actually have sent one yourself and asked them to sign it, could you?
I could have, yes, the offer was there.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open it up to other people for questions. So Peter, can I invite you to give your questions?
Certainly. Thank you very much, Linda. And thank you very much, Gozen, for being with us. It read like quite an emotional process, and I realise these sort of things always are. So I'm sorry you had to go through that. But I'm going to ask you some sort of searching questions, if that's okay. And I want to just begin by clarification with regards to the nature of the beliefs that you hold. So, for example, in the Employment Tribunal witness statement, particularly sections 12 to 15. You give very helpfully a description of your attitude to submission in marriage, and I'll just read paragraph 12. In understanding God's design for marriage, I believe that the Bible clearly teaches that, quote, the head of every man is Christ, the head of a wife is her husband, and the head of Christ is God, 1 Corinthians 11:3. In accordance with God's design, Colossians 3:18 to 19, holds that wives are to submit to their husbands, as a quote, as to the Lord, and husbands are instructed to love their wives. This is reiterated in Ephesians 5:22-33. I believe that submission of a wife to her husband is the deferring to the ultimate leadership of the husband. For the health and harmonious working of the marriage relationship, submission is a choice to submit to the mission of another, in this case a husband, that one makes based on the conviction that husbands have a God-given leadership role in the family. Nevertheless, this does not negate the fact that women can be leaders also, just not over their husbands. And you go in the next few paragraphs to specify what you think submission means, that it does not mean inequality or the wife is inferior, that we are created equally in the image of God, and all those sort of things. So I just wanted to ask one quick question, and again, a quick question with regards to this. Just how do you see that manifesting itself in the life of a marriage? So if the husband is the head of the family, how would, on an everyday practical basis, he exercise that authority vis-a-vis the wife?
Prior to responding to that directly, submission to me is submission to God first and foremost. You can't submit to anyone or anything unless you're first submitted to God. So an example I used at tribunal while giving my witness statement, while giving evidence, was I submit to the laws of the land. I abide by them. I submit to the head teacher. I submitted to Jo when she asked me to take the post down. I submit to my parents, especially growing up. I submit to people around me all the time, like, oh, what restaurant do you want to go to? Sure, we'll go to your one. Like, submission isn't an issue until the cultural context comes in, where people automatically go to, those who are badly treated. And they consider it as being subservient to other people, like without a will. Submission's actually so beautiful. It's holy. God.
And you make that point in paragraph 14 when you talk about submission to all authority, which we all have to do at various points, and of course ultimately to God. But as I say, I really just want a very quick answer as to, if you, as quick as you can, as to how it would manifest itself, this submission, which I totally concede is a good thing in general, in terms of the relationship between a husband and a wife. How you see that?
So I see it as my daily life, like now, like my choices, my decisions. I often refer back to God. I'm like, God, like, this is what I want to do. What do you think? Is this the right choice, the right decision to make? So obviously I'm not married yet, so I can't say actually on a like in terms of the practicalities. And I think there's a lot of surrender to will, pride. But I see it as a kind of like handing up to God in terms of, or like handing up to your husband and being like, I've got this thought. Maybe we could do this with the family. What are your thoughts?
And would you describe that as trusting deference?
I'm not entirely sure what that.
I'll tell you what, here are a couple of quotes. I'll read these quotes to you, and let me just see if you agree with these quotes. Domestic society being confirmed by the bond of love of marriage, there should flourish in it that order of love, as St. Augustine calls it. This order includes both the primacy of the husband with regard to the wife and children, the ready subjection of the wife and her willing obedience, which the apostle commends in these words, let women be subject to their husbands as to the Lord, because the husband is the head of the wife and Christ is of the church. This objection does not deny or take away the liberty which fully belongs to the woman, both in view of her dignity as a human person, and in view of her most noble office as wife and mother and companion. Nor does it bid her obey her husband's every request, if not in harmony with right reason or with the dignity due to wife. Nor, in fine, does it imply that the wife should be put on a level with those persons who in law are called minors, to whom it is not customary to allow free exercise of their rights on account of their lack of mature judgment or their ignorance of human affairs. But it forbids that exaggerated liberty that cares not for the good of the family. It forbids that in this body, which is the family, the heart be separated from the head to the great detriment of the whole body and the proximate danger of ruin. For if the man is the head, the woman is the heart, and as he occupies the chief place in ruling, so she may and ought to claim for herself the chief place in love. Again, this subject of wife to husband in its degree and manner may vary according to the different conditions of persons, place, and time. In fact, if the husband neglect his duty, it falls to the wife to take his place in directing the family. But the structure of the family and its fundamental law, established and conferred by God, must always in every way be maintained intact. And one other quote, the man is the ruler of the family, the head of the woman, but she is flesh of his flesh and bone of his bone. Let her be subject and obedient to the man, not as a servant, but as a companion, so that nothing be lacking of honor or of dignity in the obedience which she pays. Let divine charity be the constant guide of their mutual relations, both in him who rules and in her who obeys, since each bears the image, the one of Christ, the other of the church. Now, would you disagree with any of the content of what I've just read out?
No. One thing I do want to add is I do believe women are the weaker vessel, but I don't mean weak. Well, physically, we're not as strong as men. We don't have as much testosterone in our bodies to have the strength of men, even though there are exceptions either way. However, the fact that we have cycles and our emotions throughout the month vary. Like right now, I'm very aware I may not be married, but I defer to my father for certain decisions, particularly choices in terms of work. I'll be like, Dad, this opportunity's come up. What do you think? And he'll point things out that I've not seen and known. And it's my belief that my covering is my father until my covering becomes my husband. So I do believe women are actually protected through submission and the covering as per written in the Bible, but in practice too, I see the beauty of it. So I see that from my father being my covering, my protector, provider as and where needed, even if that's just for a hug kind of thing. But it goes from my father to my husband, and I don't see any difference from where I am now, interfering to my father, as I will prayerfully my husband soon.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, the reason I wrote out those quotes is that the first is from Casti Cornubii, which is an encyclical of Pope Pius XI in 1930, and he was quoting the second quote, which was Arcanum Divinae Sapientiae from the 10th of February 1880, both of which are from Pope Leo XIII. So that is Catholic teaching on this specific issue, and you were in a Catholic school. So I just wanted to discern whether you would, whether your beliefs are what might be described as fairly standard beliefs, either historically and certainly. Would you say that your beliefs are standard beliefs within the communities of Christians that you've known?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, good. And do you believe that the objection to your social media posts were to your beliefs as were expressed? I'll come on to the specific thing that you shared, which is the Muslim woman who was talking. But more broadly, do you think that there was an objection to your beliefs?
So from the one video, it then went to the whole premise of wife in the waiting in terms of this is 18th century teaching. So yes, I think they just genuinely didn't understand the beauty of submission. They didn't understand why I would, as a 21st century woman, have these views. She pointed out a couple of other posts in terms of I think I put something about the leading of the Holy Spirit, and they're like, what does that even mean? And I'm like, well, I can sit and explain, but I just don't feel you want to hear the answer right now because you've already decided. So Yeah, that it was definitely, she kind of went on to the whole premise of wife in the waiting as opposed to just that post.
And do you believe that she understood your beliefs?
Not at all.
Okay.
I was really trying to understand, like, what's the objection here? I'm in a Catholic school. Like, I honestly believe that if I was to be promoting LGBTQ or any of the new modern day beliefs in our culture, I wouldn't have got that backlash. In fact, they would have probably been like, look, one of our heads of years is very much active in that. Look, we support it,
Mm.
as opposed to being of a more quote unquote traditional.
Mm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, that's interesting. Just going very specifically to the specific post that they centrally objected to, beyond your broader beliefs, that I remember she did talk about the 18th century reference. Section 40 in the tribunal ruling revealed that the video that was shared was by a Muslim woman in a polygamous relationship, and it says that you said that you wouldn't have shared this had you known that the woman was in that context. And given that you say elsewhere that you posted the post not because you necessarily agreed with the content of what she was saying, but to provoke thought, what difference would the origin of the post have made, given that you clarify you wouldn't have shared it from a polygamous person as opposed to a monogamous person?
So it only came about after the theologian report that she was in a polygamous relationship. I didn't know. Like, the nature of social media is you see something like, oh, that's interesting. Let me repost. Like, you don't sit and investigate on social media before you post. It's quite fast paced. Things go viral quickly because it's like, oh, and even when I posted it, I put some, I could share the caption, but it was very much like, I don't see anything wrong with this, my opinion. Yet I put, what are you willing to do to be the wife that you say you want to be? Like, it wasn't a yes, this is the way you have to be, by no means. And plus, she was a Muslim lady. I was raised culturally Muslim. So I didn't see anything wrong with that. It's kind of supported what I was sharing, but I was fully aware that it was to provoke. My posts aren't typically this way. They're usually quite clean and quite like, yeah, here's a Bible quote. So it was a bit risky per se, but I didn't mean it was like I forgot the word they used, but like it wasn't a regular post. I don't particularly post like that. So I wouldn't have posted it if I knew she was in a polygamous relationship. But that's the only reason. I don't disagree with
What,
anything she said.
why is that?
I personally, opinion, don't support polygamous relationships.
And you think you would have been affirming a polygamous relationship or arrangement had you known that you were sharing someone
Right.
in this relation? Okay. Um, just one further question or two. One, the simple question would be, do you think that I think their objection is centered on this. Do you think that there is a pastoral dimension to your social media such that if a child under your care, 14 to 18-year-old girl, goes on the internet, looks up Miss Soydag, or Gozen Soydag, just to see what kind of stuff you put up online, as one does, and finds this stuff, that this would be upsetting, distressing, something that would compromise them on a partial level? Do you think that's a real danger there?
Not at all. I would have loved if, well, there was a student in the older group. She come up to me, she's like, Miss, you're famous. And I'm like, am I? She goes, yeah, Miss, your social media. I was like, okay. I brushed it off. It wasn't like I don't think I'm famous. I'm just a regular person who has things to say, who is active in my beliefs, and wants to encourage, inspire people to know that there's other ways of doing things than the popular culture we live in. So I know certain students saw my posts, but the majority of my following is my age group. Like, I've got statistics of insight in terms of the age group. It's like less than 1%. It's like 0.4% of people within the age group of the students at the school that are following my page. So it's not catered for them. There was another student that was talking about a boyfriend, as they often do as 14, 15-year-olds. And my response to her, because she seemed quite distressed and she wouldn't go to class. And I was like, sweetheart, I go, do you desire to be married one day? And she goes, yeah, one day, miss. And I was like, what age group? And she's like, mid-20s. I go, and you're four, and how old now are you now? She's like 14. I was like, okay, can you get back to class, please? Like, don't be entering relationships if you don't have a place for it to go right now, is my message to them. But I would have loved to talk to the students about these things, mostly to get their views on it, not to enforce mine. It would have been like, oh, okay, so these are what your friends doing. What are your thoughts on that? And
One more question. I'm just conscious that other people want to ask questions as well.
and
I'll just ask this in the context of what you just said. In the context of teenage, there is a formation, I suppose, towards being ready in your 20s to form marriage because you're thinking of courtship and the like. Within the recording of the tribunal, you mentioned that you had not, I think, until the first teacher who raised this with you, known what the word misogynistic meant. Can you see why some people might find that troubling for someone who's dealing with 14 to 18-year-old girls, where attitudes of misogyny may very well be something which they are either encountering, either in their family life or their social life, and that would be something that you wouldn't be able to address or help them with if you don't know, the concept or the word. What do you think of that general objection?
well, we are 3 years after the incident. Like, it's a word. I didn't know what the word meant, but I definitely know what the concept
Right.
means. So it makes no difference. I come from a culture where, like, the Turkish culture is quite misogynistic. It is. They're like, I get it. So I've got the cultural understanding, as well as I'm a therapist. I've heard of women being really badly treated in the most dire ways. So I could absolutely support a student and have. There was a case, I'm not mentioning names, but there was a student who was sexually abused in my year group. And with that, like, I totally understand the concept.
Cool.
I supported her. We her on to safeguarding, and social services got involved and supported the family through that. So of course I could help a student, just because I don't know a definition of a word. Like earlier you asked me a word and I was like, I'm not sure what that means. I think it's actually better to say I'm not sure rather than make up an answer.
Fair enough. Thank you very much for your answers. Much appreciated. And I'll hand back to Linda.
Thank you, Peter. Robert, can I invite you for your questions?
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Gozen, for joining us this morning. The section of the witness statement which Peter read out from, I was actually going to focus on that as well, but I'm not going to read out the whole thing because Peter read that out earlier. So you talk about what you understand submission to mean within a marriage from the perspective of a woman, and then you say towards the end of paragraph 12, which Peter read from, that this does not negate the fact that women can be leaders also, just not over their husbands. I wonder if we can just focus on that for a few moments, because it's just I think people listening in to this discussion who are not familiar with the biblical perspective on marriage will have a lot of confusion about what that might mean in the context of the modern world and how you understand it. So can you just give us some examples of what does it mean where a woman is in submission to her husband in a Christian marriage, but she can also be a leader too? What does that mean exactly? Being a leader, in what sense, in what contexts?
So being a leader means that you can give direction to others around something. So many people will call me a social media influencer. That's a leader of sorts. People are following me, they're asking me for my opinion and views. So I am a leader. I know how to take lead very easily. Like particularly in the areas that I feel really confident to do so. Like I can lead a classroom, I can lead an assembly, I can lead I cook a meal, which in essence is leading, the kitchen, the home. I've led projects, I've led assignments. So leadership is more about, over an assignment as opposed to not. Yeah, I think certain people have a quality of, you know what, they can easily take charge. They know their area. So leadership doesn't mean, sorry, does mean that you have the capacity to direct others, to give instruction to others around a certain thing. So in a household, within my beliefs, it's the husband's role to lead the household, to lead the family. However, typically in the hierarchy, as you may be aware, is the husband's the head, and then the woman, and then the children. So the women are actually there to, in essence, lead the children as per the instructions and agreement of the husband. So there's the order. It doesn't mean that she's not a leader. It just means she just doesn't, she defers leadership of the family to her husband.
But outside the context of the family setting, would
Mhm.
you, in your understanding, can a woman be a leader in business, for example?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was the pastoral lead of 180 girls. I was their pastor. I would shepherd them. I would direct them. So, yes, of course.
That's okay. Yeah. And can you just, again, this is for the sake of clarification, because there's an enormous amount of views in the modern world about a woman and a man and what their roles might be. And there's concepts of equality, and it's a huge area today. So, again, this is just to clarify, what would be examples in your understanding, where a husband, we're talking a Christian marriage here, where a
Mhm.
husband is being abusive to his wife? This is, as I say, just to clarify, because I think if we don't address this, people will wonder what you actually understand, and I think it's helpful for all of us. Could you give us some examples of what abuse is like in a marriage when a husband is being abusive?
Well, I've seen in the therapy room, I've seen this example played out. You can have an emotional abuse, you can have physical abuse, even like withdrawal of finances and resources is abuse. So there is very real abuse within marriage. My guidance and support for those women or men can be abused in marriage too. It's not exclusive of sex. You just don't hear about it as much.
Indeed.
But it's very common. So in those cases, safety is always paramount. Safety, support, to bring yourself, like, especially if it's physical abuse, a period of separation may very much be needed until um, they're able to sort out their differences or otherwise. Like it's life is a faith walk. It's a trusting, it's a daily submission. It's a primarily we need to keep ourselves safe. So I am 100% against abuse in any any relationship or otherwise. Like it's just wrong.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to move on to some other points. The girls in the school were, I understand, aged 11 to 18. Is that correct?
Secondary age, yeah, secondary school
Yes.
age.
When you engaged in pastoral conversations with these girls, um, the subject of marriage, did that come up very often?
No, there was just that one example that I shared earlier about a student. But no, it didn't really come up. I think it would have been great to, but it wasn't my place to bring the conversation up. It was more around supporting them with relationships. And even when I was doing the girl groups, relationships were a key point where Emma wanted me to help the students with relationships, to know what healthy relationships were. So I did do an assembly on friendship, which in essence is the basis of a marriage. It's friendship. So, even though I weren't talking about marriage specifically, I was talking about what does it take to be a good friend? Let's start there. So it's all relative. Even just my relationship with them, where I was able to inform, to really point out certain boundaries that were needed. You do this and then this. Again, that's the basis of marriage. We need boundaries in all relationships to keep us safe.
Now, it's been established that you didn't have a written contract for this role. In
Mhm.
your previous role at the same school, learning support coordinator, I think it was your role was called, is that right?
No, that wasn't a role that I had. That was the title of other heads of years in the same
Right.
school. My previous role was with secondary behavior support services with Enfield Council.
I'm sorry. No, thanks for clarifying. But you, yeah, so okay, we've established that there was no contract, but you had the option of sending the contract, but that didn't happen. You've established that. Can I
We,
just
we,
ask, sorry, you were
we,
going to
we were
say,
just so busy. Like it's a
yeah.
very fast pace. I had a constant to-do list. It
Mm,
just wasn't the top priority. In hindsight, it would have been really good to.
mm,
It
mm,
definitely would be a priority moving forward if I find myself ever in a role like that.
mm. Can I just ask a question? This is perhaps an aside question, but then maybe not. So the woman you portrayed in the video was a Muslim woman.
Mhm.
And you've explained that you have a Muslim background in your family, and I suppose I can understand why perhaps you might have thought it's just an example to show. But did it cross your mind that as a Christian woman
Mhm.
having a social presence, a social media presence, this probably wouldn't have changed the outcome at all in terms of what happened to you at the school. I understand that, but would it have been perhaps providing a different perspective or a different sense where the woman would have been Christian instead of Muslim? Because you're not Muslim, you're Christian. So do you think that that would have made any difference to you in terms of your profile, even though the outcome might not have changed in terms of the school and how it treated you?
No, I think had I have said the words, they would have had the same response.
Right,
Like I think they were just like so taken back on the concept of submission.
right,
Like how dare you do what a man tells you to do? It's like we do this every day.
right. Okay. What's your but you don't have to obviously talk about your current employment circumstances, but do you hope some stage to revisit? I suppose it's an impossible question because your case is being appealed, but in terms of your hopes, your aspirations,
Mhm.
I would you want to go back into a position of a similar position like this in the future, in another school setting? Because you've spoken so positively, and it sounds as though it was such a rewarding experience to you, and you wanted to be in that position between 2 and 5 years, as you said earlier, but it came to such an abrupt end.
Mhm. So I am currently working with young people still. Um,
Right,
so I still have a heart to work with particularly the age group of the secondary school students because they
right.
are very impressionable and need guidance in terms of being the best versions of themselves in a very confusing culture that we live in, a very distracted culture that we live in. And I definitely want to support them with that. So I do want to continue working with young people. Um, there's so many that are hurting and my heart grieves for them. It really
Mm,
does. So my the reason I got into the work in the first place, because I was practicing as a lawyer. Like I was doing mental health tribunals. I love the work I do because I was helping people with liberty. You know, people that are in psychiatric wards that don't have their own voice. It's always about helping the underdog of sorts, helping the one that couldn't express themselves and speak for themselves. And how much more are young people today? And I went from being so focused on people's human rights to actually empowering them with their kingdom rights. It was a
mm,
revelation God gave me, and that's how I got into education. I found out Enfield was the worst in youth knife crime rates. And I'm like, Enfield? No one would have thought. I would have thought Brixton, Peckham, Hackney. Like, come on, Enfield, the green land here on the suburbs. Um, so I went to a conference and I'm like, what do you guys need? They're like a mentor. We need mentors. I'm like, sign me up. It was voluntary. I didn't plan to go into this. I knew it was an assignment, and I know that that's not the end of my place within the education that the education system in the UK. I'm so grieved by what's happening, not just with me, but as a whole with the education system here in the UK. It's definitely one of my biggest prayer points, and I'm open to continuing to work. I don't know what it looks like right now. However, it's definitely an area that I know God has put on my heart to be a part of the change that this world absolutely needs.
Mm. You said that you shared some scripture with students. Someone called you out for this in the school. Who exactly called you out? What was their
My line manager,
position? Right.
he was
And
part of the senior leadership team,
right.
SLT.
And just briefly, can you tell us what scriptures were they, in thematically speaking? What were they about? Was it a broad range, or were they specifically relating to one topic?
I really don't know off the top of my head. It was so long ago, but it would have been something to comfort. It would have been something like you are fearfully and wonderfully made.
Mm.
It would have been
But it,
something like, you know, God loves you
mm.
so much and so do I. That was an expression I'd share often.
So when your line manager pointed this out, in what way was it being pointed out? As if you did something that was problematic? It's
So
that's
it
what
was
you're
in a,
suggesting,
yeah, it was in a review meeting. It
right?
was in a review meeting. So obviously we did our reviews. They're like, yep, 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 that's good, kind of thing. And it's like, oh yeah, one more thing. It's come to our attention that you shared. I was like, who? It's like, is this something you're doing? I was like, absolutely. I'm not gonna say no. I, I,
Mm.
the word of God has helped me through some of the most difficult times of my life. I was diagnosed with a skin disease. I had no hope. The doctors literally told me, I've got my own salvation story on my YouTube channel, Lady Gozen. You're free to go have a look. But it was, doctors said to me, we have no hope. We don't know what to do with you. This is ghastly, is actually the words the doctor said to me. So I was running to the doctors for support and help. And I was broken, hurt, weak. I
Mm.
had skin disease literally all over my body. And I saw the word of God was my solution to that. So to brokenness in the world, the solution is the word of God, not what Gozen has to say, what the word of God has to
Mm.
say. And I'm all about helping people know how loved they are. And that's my message, whatever space and place I'm in.
Okay. I just have a couple of more questions. You sound as though you've been very accommodating to them because you took down the post. You didn't
Hmm.
really want to, but you wanted to comply with them. You wanted to keep the peace.
Hmm.
And of course, it wasn't good enough for them because you've explained in the documentation why it couldn't all be taken down at once because Google takes a while for the other platforms to be clear of the material. And there was even the possibility of you using an alias. You considered that. But of
Hmm.
course, there wasn't time to. So really, ultimately, it sounds to me as though you were really willing to go to quite you were willing to go the extra mile to just comply with their demands. And when you think about it now, retrospectively, you're still happy that you would have been willing to accommodate everything they wanted from you while still having the material up. I mean, I suppose it's a compromise, isn't it? There were a few options, but ultimately you wanted the material up, but you would be willing to put material under a different name.
Hmm.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, the only issue, I think they got this a bit confused in court because there's a lot of people there that don't understand social media. The posts come down immediately from the
Mm.
page. What
Yes,
happened
yes.
in our final meeting with Emma? And I was like, what do you want? She said, what I want. She pulled up the internet search engine and she typed in Google Gozen Soyda. And she said, she goes, Gozen Soyda, wife in the waiting. And then when she typed it up, my name came up as wife in the waiting. And I said, what do you want? She goes, I don't want that. She goes, I don't want a Google search engine to come up when we type your name in. I don't want wife in the waiting to come up. Like she actually did it in front of the computer with me. So that it takes the search engine of Google
Mm.
at least like 2 weeks to take it off of the search engine of Google because the posts automatically come down. And I don't think that was clarified in the court hearing because people just are not as aware of social media. Like, I know she kept saying, she's like, I don't know how it works. And I was told, but it was the Google engine that takes at least 2 weeks. Well, I think it took about a week. It didn't actually take 2 weeks, but it could be anything between a couple of days. If it's a website that's quite quickly searched, it's more likely to get changed sooner, but you just don't know. Google's changing constantly. So it was the Google search engine that she didn't want my name and wife in the waiting to appear at the same time.
My closing question is, you said that no social media policy was presented to you at any stage, but at the same time, you did have an opportunity to read some of the school's policies. Maybe this is too far in the past, but was there anything in those policies that spoke A, about social media, if only briefly, and B, about the school's reputation and maintaining that reputation? Was there anything along those lines?
No, and even the policy that they brought up in front of me, which I had concern about, which I raised with my solicitor, and we chose to just kind of leave it, because even the one they presented in front of me didn't, on the day at the tribunal, didn't say your social media has to be private. It says to be aware of your privacy settings with social media. Those were the words in the policy. To be aware. I'm aware of my privacy settings. Does that mean, like, what does that mean? I'm quite a literal person, at least. So I believe the policy they gave us on the day, and the initial policy they gave us actually was published March, the following month of when I was fired. And then they happened to find the one that was relevant at the time, which was the identical document with a different date on the front. So I've got questions around that, but it's irrelevant, my questions. The policy they gave me in the thing said to be aware of your privacy settings on social media, and I'm very aware of them.
Can I just ask you, just to clarify one thing, which I suppose brings my thoughts to a close on this. If you, in an ideal world, of course, you would like to have continued in the job, but from their perspective, given that they didn't want you to continue, what would you have expected to be the decent and indeed legal procedure that should have been followed, rather than you being told on the day, we're having a conversation with you. This is the end of your job. What should have happened? What would have been the correct procedure? Even though in an ideal world you don't believe you should have been fired anyway, but what should they have done to have followed correct procedure?
Well, in essence, they were against the holiness of marriage, the fact that it was a God thing. I think the meetings were very informal. At no point was I told, this is a disciplinary hearing, or, please invite someone with you, maybe a trade union rep or someone to come and actually have this as a formal discussion. If they wanted to do investigations, they could have been like, cool, well, don't come to school for a few days. We're going to get some legal advice, at least make me aware that, because even the day before, she's like, we're trying to work with you. What can you do? Like, my mindset is, all right, cool, you have a concern. I really don't understand your concern. I'm now told to try to alleviate your concerns. I'm going to do my best because I genuinely, I have respect for them. They're both powerful women. They're both great leaders. I admired them and used to go to them and be like, oh, I've got this going on. Like, please help me with some wisdom. You've been at this school far longer than I have. These students more than I. So I used to go to them for advice. Even at the tribunal, I have nothing but respect for them. And other than the social media, they have never had a complaint about me. Even the tribunal, they both said Gozen has been nothing but professional in all her encounters. So I would have liked to kind of be aware of the importance, but it really seemed as though we need to throw her under the bus. We just need to get rid of this problem and be done with it. There was no, all right, how's the best way to go about this? It was just very informal. And then it was like, that's it. You're now a danger to our students after all of this great work that you've done. I had students reach out to me on social media and be like, we miss you. Where are you? I didn't reply. I thought the rightful thing to do was not to, especially in my emotional state at the time. I was devastated. I had to go and be with my parents because I just needed that comfort. I went into grief in all fairness. So it was very unfortunate for me. It was very distressing for me, but also those students. What we've now formed a new relationship with this pastoral lead. We really like her. I'm sure there were some students that maybe weren't as fond of me. That's cool, but you know, even the ones that I had a bit of kind of like tension with, they're like, Miss, we like you. They'll leave little notes on my desk and be like, best teacher ever. I'm like, so cute. But you know, they were very grateful. And I loved them and they knew I loved them because I would go out of my way for each and every one of them. Particularly when they told me that there was a need. So it was very informal. It was very much like, yep, let's throw her under the bus. Let's get rid of this problem so it's no longer a problem. Um, yeah, it would have been good to know the severity of what was on the line. And you know, had I've known that, I would have got some representations coming with me and be like, okay, like let's do this properly. You know, reached out to a trade union to be like, hey, I need support here. But I didn't have that opportunity.
Thank you, Gozen. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Robert. Jamie, over to you. You're still muted at the moment, Jamie.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better. Thank you. Yep, got you.
Well, Gozen, thank you very much for coming along and giving evidence to this commission. It's very helpful, and I've listened with interest to what you were saying. So I have a few questions to add to those that others have asked, if I may. I think you're a Turkish Cypriot originally, aren't you?
Correct. That's my ethnic origin, born and raised in London.
Right. And your name Gozen, I think you chose for yourself, is that right?
No, I was named after my eldest aunt on my father's side.
Ah, okay.
It has a
I read on your website that it has a particular meaning. I can't remember that
yes.
exactly. What does it mean again?
So it's a Japanese title given to lady samurai warriors of royal standing, and I thought that was quite relevant.
Well, exactly. Do you think the Employment Tribunal seemed to have been aware of the meaning of that name?
Oh no, it just wasn't relevant.
Well, it seems to me it might have been relevant. After all, nobody would describe a female samurai warrior as submissive, except perhaps in the sense that you meant it, which is not the same as the sense that the tribunal meant it. So maybe it is relevant. I think it's also fair to say, isn't it, that you've discovered that there are some Catholic schools that are Catholic in name only.
Correct.
And perhaps one might be, you might want to even add that there are some tribunals who are fairer and more just than others.
Correct.
And this one doesn't seem to have been particularly in the former category.
We did a bit of research on a couple of the panel members, and they seemed quite new age philosophy backgrounds. I would describe them as woke feminists.
Well, in that case, the answer to the next question is pretty obvious. To what extent do you think that philosophy of either New Ageism or woke feminism influenced their decision in your case?
Highly, highly. I am so concerned that I actually wrote to the Diocese of Westminster Education Department to express those concerns.
But I think it's, is it called the Catholic Education Service?
Someone gave me a specific email, and I know they've received it, they haven't responded, but there's definitely concern around the fact that they call themselves Catholic yet don't uphold canon law. I seem to uphold it more than they do. Even though
Mind you, some people would say that wouldn't be very hard. Unfortunately. And you may find that the Catholic Education Service is not anything much more than Catholic in name as well. So I hope you get a good response to that letter, but don't be surprised if you don't.
Right. I think education,
I should add that I speak as a Catholic. A
much
real
respect, much respect to you. I think the education system has definitely had a huge hit, and it's almost like we have to comply with certain new ideologies, new theories, and we cannot object to it. You probably are aware of Christy Higgs, where the Court of Appeal said that it's okay to oppose a view, someone else's view. In Christy Higgs, she won her case at Court of Appeal earlier this year. But most schools don't allow for this, don't allow for differing views, which I would argue that in the education system is actually healthier for students to hear opposing views, to find their own. Whereas they don't want them to find their own. They don't want them to be, objective in their decision making. They want them to go, you know, to believe what this current culture, new age, spirituality or whatever it is, the wishy-washiness, in my opinion, of today's culture.
Yeah, well, it might be, some people might call it rather something more severe than wishy-washy, given that they claim to be Catholic and turns out that they're anything but.
Correct.
But we needn't go into that now.
Mhm.
I think, legal. You say in your statement you're legally trained and have worked, and you've told us that you worked in the legal and education sector.
Mhm.
So you'll have some understanding that the decisions of tribunals and even the higher courts, the Employment Appeal Tribunal, the High Court, and even the Court of Appeal are not entirely consistent in this area of the law.
Mhm.
It's all governed, well, it's heavily governed by the Human Rights Act and by the Convention, which can be interpreted by the judges in varying ways. And that seems to be what happens in your case. I think what I should just add that what we have, and correct me if I'm wrong, from you is an article in Christian Daily, the Employment Tribunal's ruling, your witness statement, and your petition. I think those are the documents we have, don't we?
I believe so.
Yeah. I'm just going to go to your witness statement first, if I may. Then I'll go to your particulars of claim and then to the tribunal's judgment in that order, if I may.
Sure.
So if you have that available and can look at it, it will probably save a bit of time. You've told us you were raised a Muslim, and you told us that you had a skin disease. I believe you had that at the age of 12.
Yep.
And that you had to endure multiple operations and courses of drugs to deal with that.
Yes.
And there appeared to be no solution. Was the tribunal made aware of your disability in that respect?
If it's in my witness statement, they would have been.
Yes, you're quite right.
However,
What I should have said is, it doesn't feature in their judgment. Do you think that they took any notice of that?
I know that they started the tribunal a day late. So they shortened the time span that they had to discuss or to hear the case. So they were already a day late, or was it half a day late? So I know that would have impacted their time to actually read and consume a very large file. So I don't know how much time they gave to actually reading the documentation before we started, because even just the first part where we were giving our evidence, like they were like, we don't know what's going, like they allowed the other side's legal representation to really ask me the same question about 8 times. Good job I was calm and steady and didn't get rattled. I think I rattled her more because I was consistent with my responses. But they were like, we don't understand. We don't understand what you're saying. We don't understand. And my thing was, I actually kept referring them back to my witness statement. And they're like, oh, we've read that. Can you just answer the question? I'm like, but it's in here. And you're telling me, you're asking me a question that I've already addressed. So I definitely question how much time they had to actually absorb all of and it was a huge file. There was like 700 pages. And given that they reduced the length of the hearing, like I know this would have impacted their ability and time to do what they're doing. So yeah.
Well, indeed. And in paragraph 11 of your statement, you say we are to live according to God's design for sex, which is within the context of marriage between a man and a woman.
Hmm.
Do you think that, I mean, that is at the core of your philosophy of marriage, because you're a Christian, you follow the Bible. Do you think that is, as much as anything, what the tribunal was objecting, or I perhaps should say the school and the tribunal were objecting to?
I believe you're right. I actually had a conversation at the lunch table with one of the other senior leadership team members, and she was outraged that the chaplain spoke to sixth form students and told them that sex is for marriage. And she was outraged that the chaplain of the school could have said that to the sixth form students because she then gave her example that she was able to sexually explore at that age and they should be too. So this was a senior leader team member at the lunch table talking about this with me. And I know the chaplain there, me and him got on really well. I was actually talking to him about possibly doing some Bible studies after school for those students that wanted to come and do Bible study. But yes, I do know that many of the senior leadership team were atheists, definitely not of my beliefs in terms of sex before marriage.
Was that particular teacher, did they purport to be a Catholic or a Christian of any sort?
No, I no, not that I'm aware of. But she wasn't a teacher. I think she was like head of special educational needs.
And were there many teachers at the school who were not Catholic or Christian, and like that person expected the school to meet their standards and not the Catholic standards that the school claimed to meet? Were there
I
many teachers like that?
I would say the majority of teachers didn't profess to be Catholic or Christian.
Thank you for that. Now, in your paragraph 12, you're talking about attitudes to submission in marriage. And you say, in understanding God's design for marriage, I believe the Bible clearly teaches. And then you quote from Corinthians, Colossians, and Ephesians in the Bible.
Hmm.
Peter has taken you partly to this, so I just want to develop it a little bit more, if I may. As you know, the Bible also, and I'm going to quote from the Dowie Reams Catholic Bible of 1609, which was written 2 years before the King James Version, which is preferred by Protestants. But I'm going to do that because this is a Catholic school.
Hmm.
It may be seen to be a rather old-fashioned version of the Bible, but it was one that was commonly accepted. So perhaps that is the right one to use. And it says at Colossians 3:18, husbands, love your wives as Christ also loved the church and delivered himself up for it. So also ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He
Hmm.
that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man hath ever hated his own flesh, but nourished and cherished it. For this cause shall a man leave his father and wife, shall cleave to his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. This is a great sacrament. So every one of you in particular must love his wife as he does his own self.
Hmm.
Now, is that something you believe in?
100%.
And did that at any stage arise in the tribunal proceedings to complement the other side of the coin about obedience?
No, to be honest, they didn't want to hear it. They would say stuff, and I'd be like, look, there's a Bible right here. Let me show you. Like, I took an oath on the Bible to say the truth. And even the head teacher and the assistant head swore on the Bible. And I thought that was very interesting. You swear on the Bible, but you don't actually believe all that
Yeah,
the Bible says. So the judge kept stopping me, kept interrupting. No, no, no. Can you just speak? We don't want to hear what that scripture has to say or this has to say. Like they were almost like provoked by me going back to the witness statements, going back to scripture. Like it annoyed them. I annoyed the opposite side by doing so. So yeah, they didn't want to hear it at all.
indeed. And in paragraph 13, you say the Bible also teaches that both female and male are created equally in God's image, Genesis 1:26, and we are to submit to one another, Ephesians 5:21. but that doesn't seem to have been reflected in the tribunal's judgment.
It
Yeah, go on.
it was very one-sided, the tribunal judgment, and they actually read it out to me. Like we were in court. It was a very difficult listen. It was like it was they definitely favored the other side on every point. I don't even think they put one nice thing about me in there.
Well, we'll come to that in a minute. You also say in paragraph 14 that the Bible says that submission is a Christian's lifestyle. We're to submit to God in all things. We submit and humble ourselves before God. We trust providence. Therefore, submission is not only applicable in marriage, but in a lifestyle applicable to all relationships.
Correct.
As I'm submitted to God, I therefore submit to all authority, because God put people in positions of authority, i.e. to our government, the laws of the UK, our employers, line managers, etc., which you did, according to your witness statement, and even not entirely, but almost entirely in the judgment.
Right.
Did the tribunal, in your view, understand that when you use the word submission, you meant it in that sense, or did they see it in a sense of some other sense?
I reiterated it in my evidence, but again, like I felt while I was giving evidence, they were very confused by what I was saying. That they just had like this facial like confusion, like really kind of trying to understand.
As if it was that does not compute.
Right, like what are you saying? Kind of like facial expressions. Yeah, they definitely didn't understand the
Now,
position.
you'll know because you were brought up Muslim, or at least you were
Culturally Muslim, I'd say.
culturally Muslim.
Still ate bacon and there was alcohol in the house.
The word Islam is an Arabic word meaning submission. So if the tribunal objected to the word submission, did you understand them also, therefore, generically to be criticizing the whole religion of Islam because it believes in submission?
You're right,
Not,
they did. They did. However, they were outraged that I was even putting this polygamous lady on my social media. So they were like, how dare you?
It seems that although the convention, and you're a lawyer, the convention requires there to be no discrimination on the basis of religion or philosophical belief, that this school and this tribunal even more had a certain animus against certain religious beliefs. Given their animus against your use of the word submission, that would apparently seem, and indeed the video, that would apparently seem to include the whole religion of Islam.
Yes.
Thank you. You then go on to say that the Bible teaches us to follow this example, Philippians 2:3-5. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. I simply add that to what the question I've already asked you so that people can see what the position is. Now, just to ask you a bit about this, you say at paragraph 20, or really to read into the record, you completed a law degree from Nottingham Trent. You completed the bar vocational course at the College of Law in London. You got a master's at Birkbeck, University of London, in human rights. You pursued a career in law and practiced in mental health for 10 years and as an independent contractor in multiple solicitors' firms. And then it was brought to your attention that the London Borough of Enfield was looking for somebody to assist because they have the worst statistics on youth knife crime rates. None of that appears in the tribunal's judgment. They don't seem to have taken cognizance of the fact that you're an intelligent and professional woman with a very solid law background.
Every time I tried referring back to the witness statements or the bundle as a whole, they were like, no, we've seen that. Can you give evidence? No, we've seen that. Like they kept interrupting me, and being legally trained, I'm like, let me give you the evidence. Let me show you. Let me bring to your attention like the consistency in what I'm saying. But they just kept saying, no, can you speak, please? We've seen the bundle. We've seen it.
Okay, and then in paragraph 27, you say you supported 8 secondary schools in the borough, that's in Enfield Borough, as an outreach mentor and behaviour specialist for secondary behavioural support services, which
Hmm.
included both lower and upper sites at St Anne's Catholic School for girls that responded in the tribunal proceedings. Again, it shows that you have a very considerable professional experience. So that doesn't seem to have appeared in the tribunal judgment as well. Did it appear during the course of the proceedings, or were you again told, sorry, we've read that?
They definitely they were trying to ascertain how much contact I had with the school. I definitely made it clear that I went to both upper and lower sites. So both sites knew me, even though when I was as a pastoral manager, I was just on the upper site, which is year 10, 11, and sixth form.
And you just to add for the record, you also started studying counselling on the
Hmm.
level 3 certificate at Heart and Mind Counselling Training Centre, which was a unique counselling program because they teach from both Christian and secular perspectives so that you could train in both. I just wanted to put that in the record.
It was actually level 4, so I'd completed level 3. I was now doing level 4 and 5, which meant Fridays I had to study and go into class, hence not being able to be at the school and them giving me another member of staff to support on that day I wasn't in.
Thank you. Yes. And then you say at paragraph 37 that Mrs. Loveland really wanted you to come to the school. She was even indeed quite pushy, wanted an immediate response. She was
Mhm,
very clear that she wanted me at the school, stating that, quote, the school needs you, the students need you, and I need you.
mhm.
And
And
that,
that reference is the email in which she explicitly says that page here, I think 122 in my witness statement, but in the bundle.
so she knew your background, your professional background, the fact that you were a convert from Islam, and that was her attitude to you right up until the uh, she saw the or was shown the your online posts. I think that's what you're saying, isn't it?
Yes, I think it's the anonymous complaints that come in that caused her to respond in the way that she did. However, this was pointed out at tribunal. One of the complaints were apparently from a student where there was no reference to it being on My Concern, which is a program that we have as pastoral leads or just head of years, where we put concerns from students. So if there was a legitimate concern from a student, that should have been on My Concern and should have been dealt with through there. And then the parent, she didn't obviously mention their name, but she said it was a father, and I know that there was only one disgruntled father that I had come into contact with, and that was because he thought I wasn't doing things I should be doing, yet he hadn't been given the information, and there were prior conversations that I wasn't a party to that he wanted implemented, but no one told me. So I actually referred him on to Mrs. Loveland because clearly he had a conversation with her, not me, and he wasn't happy the fact that I took, I think, a day or two to get back to him, and not knowing that I was fully supporting his daughter in the ways that he wanted me to. But there was just like a miscommunication, and I also know that he, if it's the person I'm referring to, could have quite possibly been from a non-conventional relationship.
Right. Thank you for that. Now you started working at Sedan's on the 1st of September 2022, and you say you were very excited to start. And they gave you some training. You had an inset day. The training they gave you on the inset day was familiar because you'd worked with the council as at SPSS, and you'd already received a lot of training on safeguarding, equality, and diversity. So
Mhm.
you were well trained in that area.
Yes.
I just want to put that in the record as well.
I think legally being trained as well, it's something we hold very highly in
Yeah.
terms of like diversity, equality.
And these, would you agree, are all doubtless reasons why Mrs. Lovelace was very keen and anxious to have you on board?
Absolutely. She saw how I presented myself. She saw my confidence. She saw the results that I had with her most troubled students. And she
And
saw I got
you all,
results.
sorry, go.
Yeah, she
You
saw I
all,
got results and
yeah.
she wanted that.
You also had a good relationship with your line manager, and she was extremely supportive, affirming of you. You say in paragraph 43. Who
Yes.
was that? Mrs. Dano Joyce.
Yes, she was wonderful. However, she then had to leave for personal reasons, and I got another line manager who was a man, and I just say that just to identify it as a different person. And then he was the one that mentioned in one of our reviews, it's come to our attention that you've mentioned scripture to students. So it wasn't her that mentioned it as my line manager. She then had personal reasons she needed to attend to, and then a new line manager was brought in, where we had that discussion.
And did that line manager object to you raising scripture with students?
Miss Seno Joyce, or
No, the second one.
yes, he was the one that brought it. It's come to our attention.
She actually tried to chastise you, or
He did.
to criticize you for mentioning scripture to students.
Well, I think it had been reported somewhere, and he was kind of following script. I don't think it was, I don't think, yeah, I think it was just more of a, he's been told to present this to me, as opposed to him hearing directly. I, I, I got on well with everyone there. I really enjoyed my
Well,
time.
wanted to come on to that because at paragraph 46, you say one teacher, and we won't ask for their name, but one teacher commented that on the Fridays where I was not at the school, my absence was felt and that
Mm,
I had a strong presence at the school. I commented that it was probably my bright colored blazers, to which she replied, no, it is you. You are
mm,
not like the other heads of year. You're different. You are seen and felt. And was
mm.
it just that one teacher, or did others express a similar view?
There were many that expressed a similar view. So the school is in the shape of a cross.
Hmm.
Right. And right at the center of the cross was where my office was. So everyone who entered the school would have come past my office. In coming past my office, you would have seen a lot of bright colors. You would have seen some bright pink peonies on my desk. You would have even maybe heard of me bringing in my little puppy to to actually impact the girls positively. So there was like once a term, I would bring in this little tiny miniature dog, and the girls loved it. You would feel the atmosphere shift in the school where there would be no arguments, there'll be no conflict those days. They'll be like, Miss, can I hold the dog on the lead? And I would let them, because the dog was very, very kind, placid, beautiful. And they'll be like, Miss, is it real? Is it real? And I was like, oh, so all the girls would soften. So I definitely had a presence in the school, and my office was right in the center of it. So people would see the lights on, they'll see the teddies on the sofas. People felt my presence. Everyone who entered the school would have gone past my office. They would have seen me. They would have seen the pictures of me with the girls on the walls. They would have seen colorful presents. They would have seen my painting on the wall. So I was seen and felt. I know I was.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Now, when it comes on to the issues that are dealt with by the tribunal, the meeting with Joe Sanders on the 9th of February 2022, Ms. Sanders commented that if you were a man, this is from your paragraph 49 of your witness statement, if a man were to say what the woman had said, that is the woman in the video, the Muslim woman in the video, King of My Life, it would be misogynistic and that it was provocative, like Andrew Tate. Now, you
Mhm.
didn't know who Andrew Tate was at the time. He's quite a controversial online figure, but I'm more interested in Miss Sanders saying it would be misogynistic if a man said it. Did you
Mhm.
get the impression that Miss Sanders, or indeed any of the other staff members of staff, thought that women can never be misogynistic?
Again, I was a bit taken back. Like, what do you mean? So yeah, she definitely here implied that misogyny comes from men.
Right? Isn't that discriminatory against men?
I guess it could be considered as such.
So this idea of discrimination and the other complaints that they're making is, would you agree, beginning to assume a one-way direction?
It could be. And also on that same premise, it wasn't a man saying it. So does that mean it's not misogynistic?
That's a very good point. Thank you for that. She went on and said that it is the school policy that our staff personal social media pages be private. But you
Mhm.
say, despite being at St. Anne's for over 5 months, I had never been given the school's social media policy to sign, nor was I informed of this rule. The tribunal don't appear to have accepted that. They seem to have said, well, you should have looked it up online.
Hmm.
Was it online?
No, and even as I've shared already, the document that they gave me, and the first thing I saw was March 2023. I was like, oh, this was a month after I was fired. So I definitely haven't seen this one. And then the same document with a different front cover miraculously appeared the following day and said, oh, this was the one when you were available.
Hmm.
And even in that, there was nothing to say that my social media had to be private, even on the documents
So
showed up.
with nothing online and you not having been shown anything, the school appear to have claimed, I'm reading from your paragraph 50,
Hmm.
that uh, that it needed your work needed to be made private. And as
Hmm.
you say, you explained that the social media account at Lady Gozen was a ministry encouragement page and not a personal page,
Hmm.
therefore didn't fall within the school policy. In other words, it was a separate piece of work that you were doing.
Hmm.
But am I right that the school felt it had the right to tell you that you couldn't have such a ministry online?
That's exactly what they did tell me. They told me to shut it down.
Are you aware of them having told anybody else in the school to shut down any online social media pages that they had?
No, no. However, even them shutting it down wouldn't have alleviated their concerns because then people would request to follow. How would I know if that person's a part of St. Anne's or not?
Indeed. Do you know if anybody else had online social media accounts?
Um, yeah,
Other teachers?
many of the other staff had accounts. From the
And
ones
so
that
far
I
as you
knew,
know, none of them were asked to shut them down.
I think a few of them had it on private already. But to be honest, we didn't have time to go and look at people's
Sure.
social medias. We were so stretched. Like working in a school is very fast paced, intense.
Fine, thank you. Um, Again, for the record, you say at paragraph 55, in Christianity, women are seen as men's equals, whereas in Islam, many do not see women as having equal status.
Hmm. And also to add, I had these social media pages. I had a large following before they even headhunted me, quote unquote. So they could have easily Googled me prior to employment. And Emma Loveland, I believe, used to be in recruitment. So I'm actually surprised she didn't Google me before, having had a recruitment background.
Yeah, and in paragraph 59, you say that Mrs. Loveland, that's Emma Loveland, then shared her biggest concern was that I was global, meaning, of course, your online presence. That if I was to be Googled by a parent, then at wife in the waiting, one of your social media posts, would come up. No explanations were given as to, in other words, by Emma Loveland,
Mm-hmm.
as to why at wife in the waiting was an issue. You
Mm-hmm.
go on to say, to me, at wife in the waiting is a godly page. It is about walking in holiness, godliness, and purity, which I would expect a Catholic school would want to promote. I did not understand what the issue was. You
Mm-hmm.
then went on in paragraph 60 to say, she informed me that I had not done what I told Miss Sanders I would do. I replied that I'd taken down the one post she had mentioned. Miss Loveland responded that, stating that I should have known to take it off all social media platforms. Now, she expects you to take everything down, if indeed that is possible at such short notice. But it seems from your witness statement that at no point did she explain what it was about the post at the media site at Wife in the Waiting she objected to. Is that correct?
I still don't know what exactly she objects to. Even the dismissal letter was your online social media presence isn't in line with the school's ethos and mission statement. To when I questioned that, she was like, well, the ethos and mission statement's on our website. You should look it up. I'm like,
And then interestingly, at paragraph 61, you say, I was not asked once what the purpose of at wife in the waiting was. They were not interested, did not seem to care. Whilst I did not understand what the issue was with at wife in the waiting, my objective was to submit to Mrs. Loveland as my senior at work, and as far as possible to alleviate her concerns. Now, they, of course, are complaining that you didn't fully submit, or at least not in the way they wanted. But would you agree that they clearly wanted submission in one form, i.e. to them?
Yeah, they wanted me to basically delete everything, make it all go away. That's
Yeah,
what
the point,
they
sorry,
shut down my whole
I
expression.
didn't phrase my question very well, but they don't like the idea that you're going to submit to a future husband or to God or to the Bible or to Christianity, but they're quite happy with you submitting, same word, to them.
Correct.
So they don't have a problem with submission. What they seem to have a problem with is who they're submitting to, who you're submitting to.
Right. And we
Would you agree with that or not?
absolutely. And that you can't submit to a man.
Yeah, or the
It's again
Bible or
a
God,
feminist
apparently.
perspective. Yeah.
I asked how long I had to find a suitable outcome. She said 24 hours. You then explained 24 hours was going to be difficult because of the algorithms. And at that stage, you had no idea that your employment was in jeopardy. And so in paragraph 65, you say it may take a week or so to dissociate. And you felt that you had done all that you could possibly have done in the circumstances. The tribunal disagreed, and so seemingly did the school. And instead of giving you the week, I think I'm right, Hunter, they simply dismissed you on the 28th of February.
On my birthday, the last
On
meeting.
your birthday.
Yes.
Did
Yeah.
they know it was your birthday?
Oh, she knew.
Did you get the impression that that date was specifically chosen because it was your birthday or for some other reason?
It probably was because it was the end of the month and I gave my payments monthly, more than likely, but that's me presuming.
Right. And then eventually she comes out with the one and only explanation as to why she objects to at wife in the waiting and says, according to your paragraph 68, that it promotes 18th century teaching. Did she explain what she meant by that? Given particularly that the 18th century is not noted for its Christianity, but rather for its Enlightenment secularism.
She didn't say that. She referred to, it appears as though unless you're a wife, you're of no worth. To which I gave my response and said, I'm not a wife yet. I know I'm worthy and valuable.
Indeed. And then you went on to say, thank you for bringing this interpretation to my attention. This is your paragraph 68. As it is a concern for me, if this is what is being perceived from at wife in the waiting, I expressed that I would need to revise the messaging as this is furthest from the truth. I explained that if what she was saying was true, I'd regard myself as worthless, as I was not married. However, that was far from the truth, as I carried myself with value, worth, and esteem as a confident single woman. So you have said to her that you thank you for bringing that interpretation to your attention, clearly with the intention of making some changes. But I think I'm right. They didn't give you an opportunity to do that.
24 hours.
Yeah.
Um,
And then you say at paragraph 69 that Emma Loveland then explained she could not have a person working in a school with 14-year-olds who had these beliefs around the girls. What beliefs was she talking about?
She didn't specify. Everything was just so vague. There was no, and like I've shared, I'm curious, so I'm asking, like, what do you mean? And they're giving me the vaguest answers.
And then you say she appeared to have the idea that at wife in waiting was some kind of passive acceptance and that the woman was going to do nothing in the process. Again, this is incorrect. I believe it is an active process in becoming the best version of yourself, whether single or married. Did anything you say change her mind?
No, she told me right at the end. She said, I can't change the decision because I've already decided.
Yeah.
And I felt in the meeting that, like, I felt like God was saying to me, don't speak because she's already decided. And whatever you say, you're just going to frustrate yourself. I heard that in my spirit. So I just remained quiet. I just wanted to listen.
And in paragraph 73, you say Emma Loveland offered to write me a reference and made it clear that my time at St Anne's had ended.
Hmm.
I, I did not comment on the reference as I found it very patronizing. And then you
Mm.
say this, I felt that she was trying to get rid of me as quickly as possible, that
Mm.
I was good enough to give a reference for, but not good enough to stay in the school.
Hmm.
Was the reference a negative reference or a positive reference or neutral or what?
I'm guessing if she's stating that she'll write me a reference, it would have been a good one. Like,
Oh,
I,
she never actually wrote you the reference.
no, I didn't ask her for one. I didn't want any contact with them, in all honesty. I was quite hurt. I was.
Sure.
So, yeah, but it is quite patronizing. Like, oh, we don't want you to work with us, but I'll happily write you a reference.
Right. And then at paragraph 75, you say, I was not even granted the humanity to say goodbye to the students who I cared so much about. And
Mhm.
then at paragraph 77, I feel as though this had all been planned. It all felt so cold. Did they explain to you why they wouldn't let you say farewell to the students?
No, other than, and I couldn't have any access. I actually asked them to get back into my laptop because I had something I needed to have on there. It was just very cold. They just gave no reference. It was like I was a danger. I became the safeguarding issue.
And was the safeguarding issue and the danger because you believed in all the things we mentioned, God, the Bible, marriage as a
Mhm.
sacrament, or at least as something sacred and holy, uh, or was it just because you thought that wives should obey their husbands according to Ephesians and Colossians, or something else?
It was all of it. It's because I had this belief that marriage is holy and is a God institution and ruled by, you know, godly holiness. Because marriage is holy. That's why I got fired.
So, did you get the impression that they didn't really think that marriage was especially holy or any holier or better than any other type of sexual relationship?
Well, I was confused because both Emma and Joe are married.
Yeah.
I'm still confused to this day what it really was, but I know for certain they didn't bring up any safeguarding issues or any issues outside of wife in the waiting with me.
Thank you. Now, you tell us in paragraph 82 that you needed help processing what had happened. You contacted your therapist, had weekly sessions where
Mhm.
you often felt overwhelmed with tears from grief and loss, and still need therapy sessions when those feelings of loss come up about this matter.
Mhm.
And you began suffering from depression and lacked the capacity to do things you usually did,
Mhm.
paragraph 83. And paragraph 84, since your dismissal, you've not felt able to work in schools with fear of going through anything like this again, and have a
Mhm.
distrust of organizations that appear to stand for one thing but mean another, like a Catholic school that isn't really Catholic, a school with a motto taken from the Bible that they don't really believe in.
Mhm.
Now, none of that appears in the judgment of the tribunal. Was the tribunal, apart from your statement, which obviously they're aware of, did the tribunal, was this raised in any way before the tribunal at all during the hearing?
As I've shared, every time I tried referencing any of this, they even stopped my legal representation asking me certain questions around this because they were like, "Oh, is this in the witness statement? Okay, we don't need to hear this." Like they just kept shutting us down.
So, on the face of it, even though a tribunal is meant to deal with what is in the evidence, and the evidence is in the witness statement,
Hmm.
they didn't really want to hear any enlargement of the witness statement, but only, as it were, ad libitum comments from you.
Right. They wanted me to say yes, no. They didn't want actual explanations. And even when I was giving explanations, they would ask the same question so many times. But I just stayed consistent because I just shared the truth, my experience.
And I think you've said that was because they clearly didn't understand your religious or philosophical belief at all.
Correct.
Just go now, if you would, and just briefly to, I just want to finish off with this and the judgment. Your particulars of claim. I think there's one thing I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah, paragraph 14, you say, or it is said on your behalf by whoever drafted these particulars. You worked from September 22 to February 23. Throughout that period, her performance and conduct at work were outstanding and were acknowledged as such by the respondent. Was that acknowledged during the course of the tribunal proceedings, or was that challenged?
No, that definitely wasn't challenged. They both emphasized that Gozen was nothing but professional, and she, was great with the girls. Like,
So you had an impeccable record.
I had no concerns raised, and they kept saying well done, and I really like that assembly, great work with that student. Like, I would constantly get praises for the work and the
Right.
support that I was offering beyond even with the counseling. Like, they were like, yes, yes, that'd be great. That'd be great for the school to get involved with that. Like, they were very encouraged by my presence and willingness to serve.
Yeah. So just for the record, you were claiming that there was a breach of your convention right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion under Article 9, to freedom of expression under Article 10, that you had not been given notice period and therefore were wrongfully dismissed, and that you had Equality Act claims because you were discriminated against on the basis of religious and philosophical beliefs, including following unwanted conduct related to those beliefs, to which censorship of your social media activity and dismissal of your from your post, and also harassment under Section 40 of the Equality Act, and indirect and direct discrimination under Section 39 of the Equality Act 2010. Those were your claims. I think I've got that right, haven't I?
Yes.
So let's just turn then to the judgment or the ruling of the tribunal. It was the tribunal at Watford with employment judges Matthews, Turquoise, and Sagar. It's a public document, so there's no harm in naming them. What they say in paragraph 1 is the claim arose out of the claimant's complementarianism Christian beliefs. So in other words, they're trying to suggest that these are not just Christian beliefs, but some qualified form of Christian belief called complementarianism. What do you think they meant by that?
I think they were referring to the expert report from theologians. I actually have it here.
We don't have a copy of that, so you'll have to help us out as to what he said.
I can send it. I'll send it. But I think he
what does he say?
He defined it as complementarian.
Okay, and what does he define it so that it is a qualification of the type of Christian belief you have?
He said it appears as though I have a complementarian.
No, but what I'm getting at is it a qualification such as one might say, well, he's a Roman Catholic Christian, or he's an evangelical Christian, or he's a Russian Orthodox Christian, or he's a Greek Orthodox Christian, or he's a Nestorian Church of the East Christian, or whatever, or is it something less than that? In other words, is it a species of Christian belief?
So one of the questions he addresses in the report is to the extent which the claimant's beliefs as expressed in her clarification of beliefs documents broadly in accordance with Christian complementarianism. So he was assessing my beliefs, whether they were in line with complementarianism. So he was trying to put it into a box of sorts, and he was trying to justify it within the Christian faith. However, his conclusion was that not only is it complementarian in terms of the hierarchy within marriage, yet it's also very much in line with canon law.
Right. So he's saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a part of Christian belief It's not
Correct.
a specific sect or denomination of Christian belief.
Correct. It's a doctrine within the Christian belief, as far
Right.
as I understand it.
That I ask you that because that's by no means clear from paragraph 1 of the tribunal's ruling. They give the impression that it's a specific species of Christianity.
No, it's not a denomination or anything.
No,
It's
quite.
more of like a doctrine within the beliefs of probably multiple, I'd say probably most. I don't
It
know.
might be helpful if I clarify here that, I mean, I know Dr. Ian Paul, who's the theologian in question, he's an Anglican theologian. I think he would have been situating this within the debate within Protestantism between what's called complementarianism, the beliefs that Gozen and others would hold, and egalitarianism, which would be contrary to that. So that's probably certainly what he was going on about.
Thank you for that, Peter. So they set out then in full detail what all the various allegations that you have made are. We don't need to go into that because we've dealt with that in your particulars. They say, as to findings of fact in paragraph 10, to the extent that there is a conflict of belief between the parties, and quite clearly there is, your beliefs are biblical, theirs are not. And I think we can put it as bluntly as that. The employment tribunal is neutral and does not take any side in the debate. We make findings on the balance of probabilities having heard the evidence. Do you think that is what the tribunal did?
No. No. And I do know that I don't think that they acted on their own beliefs. I think it was more about the education system. But the tribunal were definitely not impartial in any way because they were just confused by anything I had to say which had a scripture basis.
The tribunal then in paragraph 12, and I just want to quickly go through this and then we're done. The respondent's mission statement is quoted as saying they want to maintain high spiritual and moral standards, that they are a fully inclusive Catholic girls' secondary school meeting high academic standards, promoting spirituality, pastoral care, and the Catholic community. And then they say, we recognize in all our relationships the dignity and value of each person, showing one another mutual acceptance and respect.
Mm.
Do you feel that they showed you mutual acceptance and respect and dignity and valued you as a person?
Not at all.
So to that extent, do you think they breached their own code, their own mission statement?
It appears that way.
Yeah. Just skipping through so we don't repeat anything. Paragraph 18, the tribunal says the school follows statutory guidance on relationships and sex education. I pause there to say, whether you're a Jewish school, a Muslim school, a Catholic school, an evangelical school, or indeed a secular school, Parliament being Parliament, and because of the doctrine of parliamentary supremacy, which you as a lawyer will know about well, everybody must follow the statutory guidance. It's the law, you have to follow it. Of course, it's a question of how you follow it, and that's where the devil is in the detail. So bearing that in mind, the tribunal goes on to say, quoting from the statutory guidance, they should, quote, consider what they can do to foster healthy and respectful peer-to-peer communication and behavior between boys and girls, and provide an environment which challenges perceived limits on pupils based on their gender or any other characteristic. It also requires that they should, quote, be alive to issues such as everyday sexism, misogyny, homophobia, and gender stereotypes, and take positive action to build a culture where these are not tolerated. Now, to what extent do you think the school and the tribunal's decision was one based upon their own understanding of A, the school's policy, and B, the law? And to what extent do you think what happened to you is as a result of the statutory guidance itself? Or both? or neither?
Well, it appeared as though they were just bringing their own experiences, definition, understanding to everything that was said. So they didn't appear to be impartial, even just with the amount of times they let the other side ask me the same question, or stopped my legal representation asking certain questions to the other side. Like it wasn't impartial in the room. Your second question, I don't recall what it was.
Is the problem the statute as much as the school and the tribunal?
The statute that the school wrote.
No, the statute that Parliament has provided for all schools in the form of statutory guidance on relationships in education.
I think it's both.
Mm.
Because even the statute that you wrote, that was the one that referred to cannot be misogynistic and that's all open to interpretation.
Well, it is, yeah.
And it's not clearly defined in terms of what that really looks like, what it is in practice. So therefore the schools almost are like, what do I do? How do I can't do this. So, you know, they don't have much guidance on the implementation of those things. So both.
And I think you've already established that the school, and indeed we'll come on to that in the tribunal, but the school haven't in any way shown how what your videos or indeed your own personal views expressed thereon is in any way sexist, misogynist, homophobic, or a gender stereotype that shouldn't be tolerated. They haven't made any connection there at all.
Right.
So even if the statute is something that causes problems, it doesn't appear to have done in this case because they didn't explain to you what it was. That seems to be your evidence. Am I right?
Correct.
Then at paragraph 19, the tribunal it says that it found that the mission statement, policies and code were accessible to the claimant, that's you, and she read the code about responsible use of social media. But I think you've told us that it wasn't available online and it hadn't been made available to you in written form. So it looks like the tribunal is simply wrong about that, isn't it?
Well, like I shared, the documentation was offered with the date a month after I got fired.
Right.
And that was the thing I pointed out to them. And then miraculously, the same exact document with no changes, with a different front cover and a different date, was produced to say, oh, this was the one that was in place. However, even on reading that, there was nothing to say that I had to be private.
Did your counsel point that out to the tribunal?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I pointed it out too, because I was concerned, like you know, I've got my suspicions of what really happened there, not for this forum right now, but it's, I actually said, can I take a moment? I've just been produced with this document. I need advice from my counsel. And they gave us some time to actually discuss that, where we made it clearer in terms of how we were going to, well, he helped me kind of like settle and just go forward with my truth, my witness statement. Yeah, just pertaining to the documentation that
now, they then quote from your video, which you've taken down, and I did a search online, and it's not there, so it's obviously you've still taken it down. Called "King of My Life" video, which shows the Muslim woman saying her husband is her boss and so on.
Yes.
And you've said that it was for discussion and didn't necessarily represent the fullness of your views. Moreover, she was a Muslim woman in a polygamous marital relationship. Regardless of what we said earlier about the tribunal, clearly in its views, having effectively, I won't say condemned, but criticized Islam, bearing that in mind, and bearing in mind your detraction to some extent from what this lady is saying, this is what they say at paragraph 25 in their decision. When viewed objectively, the tribunal find the message that women should be submissive in marriage, and bear in mind what we've said about submission. Expect submission to the school, to the law, but not to God, the Bible, or husband in marriage, is expressed in a particularly harsh way. It's stated women should be prepared when asked by their husband to do the dishes and to jump. It does not refer to mutual submission, even though you did.
Well, the video actually said, but my husband.
What I want to say is the woman is saying, I will do anything for my husband, including jump and go up on the roof. it appears to condone an abusive and coercive relationship. What do you say about that?
Her actual words in the video were, I would do this for my husband because I know he loves me and I knew the man he was before I married him.
Then they say in paragraph 26 of the ruling, the claimant added a caption underneath which was visible if you clicked on the post. The caption said, many will hear this and see the head covering and think that this woman is a slave or maid to her husband. But what I see is a powerful woman who chooses to honor a man that loves her, a man who she is willing to follow the leading of wherever and whatever he asks her. You get to choose what you see. What do you see? What are you willing to do or be for him? And she says, then they go on to say in paragraph 27, in oral evidence, the claimant said the caption was an invitation to discuss the video and that she posted the video for discussion, not because she necessarily agreed with it. So they've clocked that you said that.
Mm-hmm.
The tribunal decided that on a reasonable and objective reading of the caption wording, even if not completely endorsing the video, it was in effect saying, I am in favor of this. What do you think? What do you say about that?
That's their interpretation. That's not what I said.
Nor indeed what you meant?
No.
Right.
Because
Now,
I'm
given
talking
that
about
they think that the Muslim woman is endorsing what they call an abusive and coercive relationship, and given that they think you are saying I'm in favor of this, without actually drawing the conclusion, they appear to be suggesting that you were endorsing abusive and coercive relationships. What do you say about that?
That is what they appear to be saying and believing and kind of like making up within their own minds. Yeah.
And is that your belief? Do you endorse?
Not at all. Like I've shared, I'm a therapist. I hear these stories and I have so much empathy and compassion towards women and men who have experienced very difficult relationships.
Let me just find where they make. Yes, they also say in paragraph 40, the claimant now says she would not have posted it if she had known that the woman was in a polygamous relationship. When it was put to her in cross-examination that the language in the video appears indistinguishable from the language someone might use in the context of coercive control, the claimant said, at the time of posting, I'm quoting now, at the time of posting, I did not see it as promoting coercive control, but now I know she is in a polygamous relationship, I would not have posted it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they quote from your witness statement about your understanding of God's design for marriage. And then they go on to quote from Joe Sanders' statement.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she said to you, it will be misogynistic if a man said it, without specifying what the it was. But what I want to find, and I'll find it in a minute, is their conclusions about your views. But before we come to that, paragraph 52, the tribunal says this, we do not accept Mr. Phillips' submission, that's your counsel, that Joe Sanders had a visceral hatred of the claimant's beliefs. The evidence of Joe Sanders when cross-examined was that there was no reason that her views could not be expressed in church. So they seem to be suggesting your views are fine in church, but not in the school.
Not in a Catholic school, no.
Was that the impression that was that your understanding of what they meant there? Paragraph
That was discussed during the tribunal. What would be a more appropriate setting for this, and how if it was to even be expressed at church, it could have been televised and therefore made public, and then the students could have seen it anyway. So it was part of the discussion in the tribunal. So yeah, you can apparently talk about the Bible in church, and that's the only place to talk about concepts, wisdom, the word of God is in church.
So
what was
What
said.
was the tribunal suggesting, as they appear to be, that the views you expressed about God, the Bible, and marriage are suitable in church, but not in a Catholic school?
Correct. Is that's what they shared.
And did the tribunal say why it was inappropriate to discuss God, the Bible, and the understanding of Christian marriage in accordance with the Bible in Ephesians and Colossians in a Catholic school? Did they say why they thought it was not appropriate?
No, they didn't.
Um, uh, Then in paragraph 60, they say the tribunal found, having heard the evidence, that Emma Loveland did not say the claimant had 24 hours to take the post down, but that the claimant said she would go away and see what she would do, and they agreed to meet the next day. What do you say about that? Is that actually what happened or something else?
No, she said I've got 24 hours to make whatever wrongs that I didn't fully understand right.
Now, they don't say in their judgment, but did they say during the course of the proceedings why they didn't accept what you said? Why they effectively saying that you have forgotten or have not got the facts right?
I still to today do not know what the actual objection is, other than that's not allowed in this school.
And then, quoting from Emma Loveland's witness statement regarding the meeting on the 28th of February, your birthday, when you was dismissed, they quote her as saying, "At no point did I criticize the claimant's beliefs or even say that I disagree with him, but I explained that it was inappropriate for her to be promoting this message publicly when the views expressed in that video were so incompatible with the school's mission statement." Let's break it down. Did she at any point criticize your beliefs?
Yes, she told me that the whole ministry and premise of Wife in the Waiting is like, yeah, that it means that I'm worthless and it's not an empowering message for women. That's what was said. So the whole ministry, the whole premise of the ministry was criticized.
And she disagreed with it.
Yes, she did disagree with it.
She then says, "I explained that it was inappropriate for her to be promoting this message publicly." Did she ever say to you that it was inappropriate? And if so, how?
Nope. And I did ask her multiple times.
And then she says that the views expressed in that video were so incompatible with the school's mission statement. Did she say how it was incompatible with the school's mission statement?
I specifically asked, and she said, well, the mission statement's on our website. You should go have a look. And I'm like, but how? And the mission statement does say to act justly, tenderly. It's on their website still today. You can have a look, but it definitely mentions God in it. However, I'm not allowed to mention God, or maybe it's not the same God. I still don't understand.
So what the tribunal says is, in paragraph 65, we accept Emma Loveland's version of the conversation because we found the claimant was understandably upset during the meeting and her evidence about exactly what was said was not clear. What do you say about that? Is that a fair summation or an unfair summation?
I was definitely clear in what I was asking. Be like just me as a person. I actually have a visual memory. I remember very distinctly where I was sitting, what I was doing, when Emma got up and sat down, she handed me a box of tissue. So right at the end, there was tears on my face. Understandably, I've just got fired from and don't know what's happening. She extended me a box of tissues, and then the conversation soon came to an end. And then even still, I said, thank you for the opportunity. Like I wasn't going to come out of the character that I am. I wasn't going to be rude. I was going to be respectful always because that's who I am, even though I didn't understand what was going on.
In paragraph 72, the tribunal says, the tribunal accepted Emma Loveland's evidence that it was not because of the claimant's views that she terminated the claimant's contract. Under cross-examination, she said that if the claimant had discussed her views in a different forum, say in a Bible group discussion,
Mm.
that would not be problematic. So is that the same as we said earlier about whether if you raise the matters in church? In other words, it's okay in church, it's okay in a Bible group discussion, but not in a Catholic school.
Right. And the example I gave earlier, the chaplain wasn't able to have that conversation around sex before marriage with sixth form students. So that was a chaplain. Um, I just, yeah, I don't even know if Emma was aware of that. However, the school definitely weren't open to having certain conversations in a Catholic school be had around God's word, what the Bible says as a view.
And they say in paragraph 73, Emma Loveland said in evidence, the post was what triggered everything. We needed it gone. Did Emma say that to you when in the meetings you had with her?
Um,
That
well,
we
Joe
needed
had
it
said,
gone.
Joe said, um, Joe said, take the post down.
But did Emma Loveland say we needed it gone?
I don't recall, but she did say, "Oh, it appears it's still up." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I don't even go there." I think it was like a Facebook something with like probably about 1,000 followers. It really is a small in comparison to the rest of the social media presence. And I took that down immediately. Like I
Sure.
wasn't too bothered about. I'd already agreed to it. I wasn't aware that it was still up.
Now, the substance of what I was getting at earlier is at paragraph 74, which I think is the important paragraph of the judgment. Under cross-examination, I'm reading from the judgment, paragraph 74, Emma Loveland explained that the termination was also related to the claimant's reaction to the concerns they raised, which seems to suggest it's a bit more than just the post,
Okay.
which they needed gone, which seems to mean that the tribunal is contradicting itself.
Mhm.
But we'll leave that for the moment. She was concerned that the claimant did not appreciate that the King of My Life post was potentially harmful to students in the school who may be vulnerable. Did she ever say how it was, in her mind, potentially harmful to students in the school?
No.
The tribunal goes on, she found that quite worrying. The, the claimant, this is a tribunal saying this, demonstrated no insight or understanding of how her post might affect those families or vulnerable girls learning about relationships. Did either the school or the tribunal at any point explain to you what lack of insight or understanding they were talking about?
They were confused that I was asking questions. They didn't answer any questions. They were just like, why are you even asking questions? Even Emma had that expression on our last meetings. The tribunal were like, why are you even asking? What's the matter? You should know.
Exactly. So they go on to say, although there was no indication that the claimant was sharing the views in the video directly with the students,
Mhm.
pause to note that.
Yep,
So you haven't actually, there's no evidence, they say, that you shared it with the students.
because I
They go on to
hadn't.
say the lack of insight into the possibility that the video was promoting coercive control was concerning.
Mm. That's what they said.
So they seem to be suggesting that you are approving of a video that promotes coercive control. Are you? Were
No,
you?
no.
Right. So then finally, uh, they said at paragraph 134, we consider that Joe Sanders' words on the 9th of February, brackets, that if a man made the same statements, it would be misogynistic, unquote, did not amount to harassment or have the effect of censoring the claimant. While it was unwanted conduct for the claimant to experience challenges of the post on the grounds it may be perceived as misogynistic, it was a reasonable comment to make in the context of a discussion about how the post may be perceived. The claimant says she had to look up what misogynist meant. It follows she cannot have been upset at the time, but we accept she may have been when she found out what it meant and read about Andrew Tate. That outcome demonstrates the value of free speech, apparently. The claimant had learned about something that was highly relevant to her work with 14 to 15-year-olds. We did not find that the purpose or effect of the conversation was to violate the claimant's dignity or create an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment. What do you say about that?
It definitely was intimidating. It was definitely like you're found guilty before we even want to hear from you. I didn't have any freedom of speech at all.
So they go on to say Joe Sanders was putting forward a viewpoint. In other words, when Joe Sanders, in your words, creates an intimidating and hostile environment, that's just putting forward a viewpoint.
And telling me what
But
to do.
conversely, they say the claimant said she had posted a video for discussion.
Mm-hmm.
If she took offense, we find that was not a reasonable reaction in the circumstances. In other words, Joe Sanders putting you in an intimidating, hostile position is merely putting forward a viewpoint.
Correct.
But you, in posting a video for discussion, which you don't necessarily agree with,
Mm-hmm.
are endorsing a coercive position which might be harmful to 14 or to 11 to 18-year-old girls.
Right.
Did you find, in your view, or did you consider that that was a balanced approach for the tribunal to take between
Not,
what you said and what Joe Sanders said?
not at all.
Um, and then in paragraph 140, the claimant says Emma Loveland criticised her actual or perceived beliefs. We find that she did not. Well, you've already commented on that. And then, as with the comment about misogyny, that was a reasonable viewpoint to express in relation to the King of My Life post. She cannot reasonably take offence at reasonable opinions being expressed about it, or to assert that offering an opinion was censorship. Were they just offering an opinion, or were they going rather further than offering an opinion? What do you
They were
say about
definitely
that?
going further because they told me what to do about it and they shut it down. They were saying, take off these posts. You can't do that. You can't say that in this school. This isn't allowed. You're actually a danger if you do say those things and present those things, albeit on social media in your own time.
Right. Okay. And they say in paragraph 49, we concluded that posting the video, as she understood it at the time, was a manifestation of her beliefs. Well, you've already answered that point, but I just want to put that in the record. It was clear, paragraph 150, to the tribunal that the claimant's evidence was that her belief in a hierarchy within marriage arises out of her religious beliefs. So putting those two paragraphs together with what we've seen before, it might be said that the tribunal is saying that your belief in a hierarchy of marriage, which is your religious belief,
Mm-hmm.
is somehow endorsing a position of a coercive relationship, which should be kept away from 11 to 18-year-old girls. Is that a fair construction, or is that an unfair construction of their view?
That appears to be their view, but it's so far from the truth and it's so far from my views.
Um,
Jamie, can I
yeah, we're nearly done. Just got one more
thank
question.
you.
Paragraph 164, the third last paragraph, the tribunal says it was necessary to ensure employees and workers were aligned with the respondents' teaching of equity, equality, and tolerance, because that would enable the respondent to achieve the aim of guiding the students in preparation for adult life and comply with its pastoral obligations. And then 165, we found, well, the claims are not upheld and are dismissed. So what do you say about that? Did you in any way consider that your position in the school was in any way not aligned with the school's teaching on equity, equality, and tolerance?
So far from it. On that premise, it will mean that the actual like rules within doctrine within Catholicism don't comply either with those things.
Or Islam?
Or Islam. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Time is marching on. I'm anxious that we finish by 1. I'm going to allow one question more from our panel. And Gozen, thank you for your openness and willingness to respond to all questions. I just have, might have several questions, but I'm only going to ask one. Did the school have many transsexual pupils, any bisexual pupils? And what was their general policy for dealing with these issues as they arose?
There were some. I know it's quite sensitive, even in tribunal. I don't want to say too much about that. There wasn't a lot of guidance. I do remember there was one incident where I kind of like asked for some guidance, asked some of the people that have been there a lot longer than I. However, I even took it to my own therapy course. I wrote a paper on difference and inclusion in terms of like how can I, with my views, with my faith, my Christian beliefs, support someone who lives a lifestyle outside of this. So I actually took it to therapy, and the conclusion of that paper was that in my pastoral role, I needed to love the person primarily. And, I can still hold my views, but my role there was to listen, support, and love that person. So if they wanted me to address them by a different name, I did do so. I actually, or if there was a way that they wanted me to approach them, I honored that because my pastoral role was to love them. So, yes.
That was the school's policy too, was it?
No, I actually asked, like, what's the guidance? And they're like, well, some people say this, some people say that. There was no policy. I wasn't given any clear guidance on how to deal with the day to day, but in asking questions and then taking it to God in prayer and to my therapy course as a pastoral lead, I came up to that. I decided to respond in that way.
Sorry, I'm asking one more question here. What was the school's Ofsted rating?
Outstanding.
Okay, I think that actually says quite a lot. I'm going to curb myself at this point. And Peter, one question, please.
Yes, I'll ask one question. My understanding, Gozen, is that during the conversation that you had with either the teacher or the head teacher, an objection was made to your expressed beliefs about sexual purity before marriage, and which is actually, again, Catholic teaching. We've identified that they appear to have a problem, or at least she has a problem with the church's teaching with regards to the relationship between men and women in marriage, describing it as pre-18th century, antediluvian. But with regards to sexual purity, it seems to be the case that St. Anne's teaches 1010 RSE course called Life to the Full. This claims that marriage is repeatedly described as God's plan for sex across the entire program, and all forms of sexual activity outside of marriage are shown to be contrary to this. Is it consistent, would you say, for the school to have a problem with your expressing of views on biblical purity and sexual purity and yet teach this as an official teaching within the school.
Yes, it's completely confusing. It doesn't line up, does it?
No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Robert, one question, please, from you.
Gozen, you mentioned the second line manager brought up the issue of scripture verses that you brought up with students. Do you have any knowledge as to the belief or lack thereof that this line manager had?
Yes, I'd had a conversation with him. He professed to be atheist. Yet, upon inquiring, I think I mentioned this earlier, he came from a Christian background.
Right. Can I just, there's two other very brief questions, if I may, then I'll close. You said that the staff in the school had their social media accounts. Do you have any knowledge whatsoever about the subjects that any of those staff wrote about on their social media accounts?
No, I didn't go off and investigate people in that way. I can only presume that they were personal accounts where they'll just post pictures of themselves as opposed to putting up any particular message. Whereas, as I've made clear, mine were very much ministry-led accounts where I may post a picture of myself, but it would have a scripture reference, an encouraging message. It would have something to uplift and empower people around it. I don't typically post my day to day on there. It's always with an intention to uplift, encourage, empower others.
And very, very finally, briefly, you said that they saw you as a danger. That's your language, not theirs. They didn't use the word danger, did they? Or did they?
They didn't use the word, no, but the fact that they suspended me on the spot without any notice, signed me out of my laptop immediately, and would, kind of told me not to come back tomorrow, like shows an imminent threat of sorts.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Robert, taking a Trinitarian approach to one question there. James, do you have any further question? You're muted again.
No, none from me.
Okay, thank you. I've just had a question Edmund has just put up in chat, asking if you had ever been asked to help with the RSE teaching, Gozen.
No.
No, okay. Again, I think that actually is quite telling in view of what
There wasn't much consistency. There was I forgot what it was, but there was like some kind of lesson where we would discuss LGBTQ and other kind of like cultural aspects, like where they'll discuss, periods and things like that. So there was a lesson, I think it may be the one you're referring to. I can't recall what it was specifically called at the school. However, there wasn't a consistency. All right, there might have been slides that were the same, but the actual teachers didn't really get training on how to teach it. So each teacher would have their own style in the way that they would teach the subject on, family, healthy relationships, mental health. So there wasn't a consistency in the way that it to be taught. It was just like, hey, these are the slides you're teaching this subject. And even with the students' feedback, there was inconsistencies with just the way people were teaching certain things.
Thank you. I mean, that really does seem to indicate a complete confusion in policy terms and how to respond to things generally. And again, there seems to have been a lot of confusion in how to approach your social media presence. So, yes, this is well, thank you so much for giving us your time and giving us your testimony. And thank you to the panel for your searching questions here. I think there is an enormous amount to be included in our final report.